Hello and welcome to Bridging the Gap. I am your host, Kelly, and I would like to thank everyone for joining and watching the show. And also, I want to thank the panelists. I have Nelson today. I have Simply Indy, Trigger Mike, Fee, Fatima. I'm sorry, Fatima. Said it wrong. My apologies. Coach K and Raul Duke. And I'd like to give everyone a chance to go ahead and introduce themselves. Feel free to share whatever you're comfortable sharing. I'll start with you, Nelson.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Gary Nelson. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I have a channel called Nelson Media where I talk about different mental health topics, about personality disorders, about relationships, a little bit of everything. Some short films in there, things like that, just to help bring awareness to some things that we really don't discuss in our community, and kind of just try to bridge the gap that way. Um, I work with all age ranges from mostly from 13 up into around 50 on a wide range of mental illness and personality disorders. So looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. Simply Indy, you're more than welcome to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I am Indy. I am a Army vet. I'm an engineer, a network engineer, and I do like cloud computing as well with AWS stuff. Um, and I heavily advocate for mental health. I've talked on it on a couple of other episodes that I've been on, especially being a veteran and stuff like that. My ethnic background, my mom is Middle Eastern. Her family's origin is Israel. I do read, speak, and write biblical Hebrew. Um, and so, yeah.
I love that. Trigger Mike.
All right, so I'm Trigger Mike. The name comes from my side hustle. Not, I don't like to trigger people. I am a firearms entrepreneur. I own a firearms company in which I sell firearms and teach. But by daytime, I am a healthcare administrator. I do have a master's in healthcare administration. I've left my corporate job recently to start my own applied behavioral analysis clinic, which is the therapy most associated with care for children with autism. So that should be about Q2, working on that.
Fee, you're more than welcome to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Fee Robinson. I am a mechanical engineer by trade, and I heavily advocate for mental illness and mental health. I'm all for it. I'm in therapy myself, and I've been through it, so I'm definitely interested in this topic. So I'm excited for what's gonna come.
Excellent. Fatima.
Hi, everyone. I'm Fatima here.
I have to tell you, this subject was her idea. So I'm actually going to have her start it with something we discussed earlier. So go right ahead.
Yeah. I'm a mom of two. I have a business in writing, primarily in healthcare, and South Asian background. So just really excited to be talking about mental health and things like that.
Excellent. And Coach K.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katie. I am a certified life coach. I work with young adults, teens, and I teach high functioning young adults and teens. And I teach them how to manage their thoughts and emotions so that they can reduce their stress without giving them just another strategy to study better. And I'm from Ohio. And yeah, that's about it.
And Raul Duke.
My name is Raul Duke. I'm a literary mastermind and ghostwriter to the stars. I don't have an extensive background in psychology, but I am a little crazy. And so I think I can bring a unique perspective to this panel. And I'm just happy to be here.
I freaking love you. You're so stupid. Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me. That's why I invited you tonight, because I knew you were a little crazy. Yeah. Okay, so I always like to start off with an icebreaker. I kind of, this might be touchy, but I was speaking with Fatima earlier, and we were talking about Twitch. Did you want to go over that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't remember when, like, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, the DJ from the Ellen show, he, committed suicide. And so I think we were just kind of talking about an icebreaker and just about, but you were talking about a scenario, and you can explain that scenario, but immediately when, you mentioned suicide, I just thought of him. So.
Mm-hmm. So my icebreaker is how you would handle someone if they came into your setting, whether it was work or home, and they didn't quite see themselves. I guess I always hear people who are thinking about committing suicide. They always say, like, I didn't do it because that one person smiled at me, or they said a kind word to me, and they were like the game changer for me changing my mind. So, like, if you were to be approached by someone and you didn't know if they were just having a bad day or if they were suffering with mental illness, how would you handle that? Anyone can go first.
I'll go. So if it's someone that I know and I can tell something's off, for example, there's a girl that I used to work with, so fun, so bubbly. I like to leave room for her to have days where she's off. So in a sense where it's like, sometimes people expect the bubbly people or whoever to always be like that. So then when they're not, it's like, what's wrong? So I do leave room for that, but for her, let's say something is going on, or someone that I don't know, I kind of read their behavior and, I'll be personable, say, hey, like, how are you today? Or whatever. I'll act natural, but I'm not going to like poke, pry. And just doing the little things. And if I can really tell that, they're going through something, I just let them know in a way that with my presence that I'm there. And of course, it just depends, but I just don't overdo it. But I let them know I'm there, if that makes sense. Even if it's like, hey, I hope you have a good day later. I'll see you tomorrow. I don't know. It just depends who it is, But yeah, so that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I think things like that make the difference. So has anyone else like experienced that? Or
Well, I had a friend who like had a complete meltdown, and well, we were together with my other friends, and she was more like expressing, like trying to push, like, hey, get better, like feel like you're happy, be happy, right? Like I had to really sit back and kind of like breathe with that person and just like feel like let them kind of feel me and like my energy. So I've seen the like how they were reacting to my friend who was like completely like over the top and like to me. So like I had to make sure, because I've been through it, right? I had panic attacks, and like when people go through that, you have to like kind of not panic with them and like really learn to like navigate like how they're feeling. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Would anybody else like to share? Everyone doesn't have to answer.
I think for me, being in the military gave me a unique perspective as far as like things to look for, because people don't recognize that mental health can also be high functioning, essentially just like neurological or illnesses or ailments that people are born with. There's not just a absolute thing. There's a spectrum to it. So being able to like recognize when someone has high functioning depression, I experienced that. So for me, I was like, being able to recognize those signs in other soldiers when we're in formation and, like we're taught you need to soldier on. Like you can't just, like the mission has to get finished, whether or not, this person is going through a divorce, they're battling alcoholism, somebody back at home just died, flights are expensive, now they can't go bury their loved one. Like these are all real things, and these people become high functioning. And, so I was able to kind of like learn how to identify, because most people that actually follow through with suicide don't have any prior warning signs. They create like a normative culture within their function and their routine. There might be like deterioration or things that like they show that are small. It's like you have to really know that person, because people aren't just going to show you. They're going to continue on with their normal, behavior. That's why they say, like, watch out for the signs of, like, oh, they're giving away all their stuff. They have no value for their money. They might start impulse buying. They might start making like really drastic decisions. Things like that. Might go check up on their life insurance or get life insurance. But you have to know a person to know that they're like exhibiting those behaviors.
They're doing things outside of their norm.
Yeah, outside of their norm.
Interesting. Would anybody else like to share? I saw you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I am a sibling of 7, and being second generation, parents, immigrants here and things like that. We went through some trauma and things like that. So we all all seven siblings. We're all different personalities, but I'm still learning about mental health and the signs, and this is really informative. Everything that people have discussed. One thing for me is that you definitely have to know the person. 2 of my siblings, they would just ignore my phone calls, and they were really going through depression. And so same thing happened with both. But of course, then there's high functioning. So that's totally different. But for me, it was just like, that was different from the pattern behavior, so they were just ignoring all calls. It would go on for like weeks. And then I find out, something, you know what I mean? So I think that's one thing, is that they just stop talking to loved ones.
I think I saw you come off the mic, Nelson.
Yeah. When it comes to, so for me, it's all about knowing the person, that if this is a friend that's, seems off, knowing how to approach them, knowing what's off about them. So, some of my friends I know to ask, hey, is everything okay? And I know their first answer is not usually going to be what's really going on with them. So with certain people, I have to pry a little bit more. I have to ask a little bit more open questions. But one thing I think is really important for us to always keep into consideration too, is knowing that sometimes we might open a can of worms that we're not ready for. And I think this is where a lot of people go wrong, and where we potentially harm a lot of other people, is that if we hear something that we don't know how to deal with or what to do with, our behaviors as a result of that. So you see a lot of people, if somebody drops something heavy on them, we get out of there as fast as we can. So I'll keep you in prayer, and kind of leave it at that, rather than allowing that, being comfortable in our own skin, allowing that person to speak, and then acknowledging the fact that, listen, I don't know, I really don't know how I can help you, in this situation, but have you spoken to a therapist before? Or have you done this or that? I think a lot of times we get caught up in, one, trying to save our own selves, and 2, sometimes even trying to become someone's savior ourselves. So we end up getting burnt out, because now we know this person, every time we see this person, they're going to drop something heavy on us. They're going to talk our ear off. We're not going to know what to do with it. And now we feel obligated to listen to them because no one else is. So a lot of it is knowing ourselves, being comfortable with being uncomfortable in certain situations, and being comfortable with telling people that, there's certain things we can't handle, but that doesn't mean that we don't care about you. So it's different situations for different people.
Thank you for that. How do I address you? Is it Dr. Nelson?
No. It's just Nelson. I'm a LPC, but I'm very informal, so you can just say Nelson.
No, I just want to make sure. I didn't want to disrespect your title at all.
Oh, no.
Like, people work for it, they deserve it.
You can call me Dr. Duke if you'd like.
I'm not calling. Everybody else can.
I like our names together, kind of, because mine's a joke because I'm a UNC fan, and your name is Raul Duke. So does anyone else get that, or no?
Yeah.
Very few people do.
Did that not land?
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Several
All right,
participants on these panels have just thought that's my real name, and I go with it.
Did you have anything to add, Raul Duke? Dr. Duke?
There you go. I am a doctor of journalism. Not to get too long-winded into it, pretty much the rest of the panelists hit the important parts. For me, I have had several friends. I mean, you know me, I used to have a lot of crazy people that I hung out with. And some of them I didn't care if they went nuts because they were not truly someone you'd want to save. But for friends of mine that were, good people that you were looking after, unfortunately, I did the wrong thing. I've since learned better. I did the tough love technique and tried to snap them out of it. I do not believe that's the proper way to go. It did actually work, but it worked inadvertently. But if you wanted to get into how different cultures, later on, a lot of just suck it up, stiff upper lip type stuff is a lot of where I came from. And so I utilized that for my friend. We're still friends now, but it was not the proper path to go, I think, now that I've, matured.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into that. Trigger Mike, did you have anything to add?
Not on this particular one.
Okay, so nothing for the icebreaker. I got it. It's cool. All right, so we'll jump into the first topic then. Thank you for everyone who added to that. So I kind of want to get an idea from each person on what mental health means to you based on your knowledge of it and then your cultural background. This can be a quick question because we're going to get into the deep stuff next. And you have to go last, Mr. Nelson, because I know you know everything.
So I coming right out of college, my first job was, so I've done mental health at all levels, actually. So all the way from tech to the nurse to the administrator or mid-level administrator in the behavioral hospital. So before, in being introduced to it in the formal sense as an employee, I did not realize how many diagnoses there were, just how, because we don't really learn that stuff in health administration, or you do learn some in nursing, but not as deep as the diagnoses go and the behaviors and symptoms and all of that. So I was heavily immersed in that life very early on. And what's weird is that, people with those diagnoses kind of became my norm. So it really changed my outlook on just how high functioning people can be out in this world dealing with different types of issues. We had doctors on some of our units. We had therapists on units. You see what I'm saying? So on the chemical dependency unit, not really on the acute. That's drug addicts and some people on the street. But it'd be we had athletes, of course, on those units. So yeah, it really immersed me into that life, saying, "Oh wow, this is the people who are on TV putting on a brave face, but yet they were checked into the behavioral hospital last weekend, right?" So
people you didn't even think would be.
You would never, people you would never think, and you have to know all of their business. You have to, you see their meds, you see their psychosocial history. If you take time to read that, you just realize people are dealing with real world issues, and they have to kind of put it to the back burner to put on a brave face for the world, for their children, and basically do life after the fact. So.
I'm not going to call names. I'll just let anyone chime in that has something.
I was going to ask if you wanted us to go in a particular order, or if you, okay.
Raise your hand. No, I'm just kidding. Whoever.
I think, so on my father's side, they're Caribbean, and, they don't believe in mental health. They're like, you need to pray, or, it's just like a demon, or it's like negative energy. You need to go for a walk, or get out of the house, or stop being lazy. Depression is not real. You're just being lazy. I think that was definitely in my dad's side of the culture heavily advocated for. In my mom's side, it wasn't really talked about until my great grandmother actually this was back in a time when they didn't like have diagnosis and mental health wasn't as known. And so she actually got the lobotomy. Yeah. So like they actually admitted her into a psych facility, and she had a lobotomy, and she also had electroshock therapy. And after 3 sessions of that, she actually went and killed herself. Because back then, yeah. So in my mom's side of the family, it became like very like everyone is very like Thanksgiving. We all basically had like a family therapy session almost. So on my mom's side, they are very like, your life matters. If you feel like you want to hurt yourself, anything like that, I don't care what time it is. You can go get help. She'll help you find counseling. So 2 totally different spectrums of the culture. And I've kind of trying to been educating my father about, mental health and things like that. Because I, even as someone who suffers from it, I see it in him, right? But you can't diagnose people unless they want to be, get help and stuff like that. And then again, being in the military, I think I talked about it on another episode that I was on. I actually did see a soldier and have experienced firsthand suicide and the secondhand effects of that. So mental health is like huge.
It is. Who else would like to go? Not everyone has to talk about it, but whoever's comfortable.
I'll go real quick. So to me, I think there's how I look at this is there's mental illness and there's mental health. When you have mental health, or mental health in general, does not mean the absence, or I think this is how society views it. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up with how society views it and how I view it. Society views mental health as not having an illness, but it's like, but how does one obtain mental health? And I don't think we talk about it, at least in America. In my family, it's kind of like, well, if you're feeling depressed or whatever, you go get a medication, but that's it. No one really talks about the brain side of it, or just the overall psychological side of it, and the things that you can do in terms of mental health, like physical health. There's mental illness. I'll leave that to the professionals, Nelson, the psychiatrists. But I don't think we talk enough about mental health. And mental health is not going to take a bubble bath and, talking to a friend sometimes. How do you process what's going on in your mind? What are you even feeling? We're not even taught how to feel. You know what I mean? And that actually sometimes negative feelings are okay. When you have a loss in the family, when things don't go right sometimes, yeah, you want to feel like crap sometimes. But how do you deal with that? That's how I view mental health. So, okay.
Thank you for that. I think that was an excellent addition, because that is true. That how to process it. You're going through it. Someone tells you, okay, you're going through something, but what do you do while you're going through it? That's a good point. Thank you, Coach K. Sayeda, I know you just joined. Did you have anything you wanted to add? I know you have to leave, right?
No. I'm okay until like 9:30.
Okay.
What was the question? I'm so sorry. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. What's the question again?
Oh, so I'll read it specifically so you know exactly what it is. It's, what does mental health mean to you based on your knowledge and your cultural background?
Wow.
If you need a moment to think, you can.
Yeah, no, thank you. I agree with Coach K that, we all have different definitions to a certain point. And if you have not been diagnosed, because nowadays it's so common, for people to say, oh, I have this. For example, I have dyslexia. That's dyslexia, how you call it in English? Dyslexia, I'm sorry, dyslexia. So with numbers, but I am aware that I have it. Have been diagnosed with it? No. And then when you read about depression, and then the more you start reading, yes, I'm not sleeping well. And then you feel like, oh, I am depressed. But feeling depressed and being diagnosed with depression syndrome, or it's totally different, because we all can have depressive moments in our life, ups and downs. We all can have stressful moments. We all can go through the burnout moments in our life, but not being specifically diagnosed. The problem is that we are not putting the emphasis when we feel this way to look for help. And that's when it starts becoming, a tendency. And then we feel like, okay, it's okay. And then we start having this thoughts for some people that don't know how to process those emotions, because at the end of the day, it has to do with our emotions. We're not taught about emotional intelligence, how to, manage our emotions and not react over those, how to handle situations, stressful situations. And, I also think that some people give advices without someone asking for an advice. Most people know what you have to do, you just don't do it. So unsolicited advice should not be done. It's like you shouldn't be giving no advice to no one when they're not asking for it, because people know what they have to do, which is don't do it. What you need to do is just listen. That's all you have to do, listen. And let the other person vent out, because that's what people need, like just someone that can hear them and feel supported, not judge. So it's a very complicated topic, to be honest. Now, when my background, no one in my family has had any type of issue like this. But I will go with what simply Indy was saying. Like, my dad is so tough. Like, I remember when I was little, I would feel bad, and he's like, "No, until you're dead, you're gonna go to school." He didn't care how I was feeling. He was like, "No, you're going." But he's so disciplined and like strict that he didn't care if I was feeling a certain way. So to him, that's like weakness. Oh, you're just being weak right now, And it's like, no, we all have the right to feel, and it's okay. So that's it.
Thank you,
No, I love
Sayeda.
that. I love that. It's so true. I mean, well, I'll share. I was born in Bangladesh, and my parents came like when I was 9, so we all moved to Canada. And with that, like my parents had their own mental, they had they had depression. They went through their own thing, and it kind of projected to the kids. So it followed through. Like there was fights in the home, and I wish my parents believed in therapy, believed in like mental health support, right? But they didn't go and do like look for it, because they never believed in it. Their parents never believed in it. Being from where I'm from, they were just so like, they think if you say anything about therapy, you're going to a mental asylum, or like you're calling them crazy. I tried with my parents. Like right now, I'm in therapy. I believe in. I want to break that like generational curse or generational belief with my daughter, right? So me and my daughter, we talk. I have to actually, like after my divorce, I was under like some deep depression, so I had to go to take therapy, and I saw that I wasn't my best self. So I had to see that, and kind of convince my parents. And when I tried to go talk to my parents about it, like it was just shut down, right? So like I try to, like I know where, like what to say around them certain times. Like even till now, I think they need help, but it's just that like I try to be like, I have to tiptoe around it, right? I can't really be too aggressive, or like I have to think about their feelings, and it's exhausting in a way. But I mean, I think like I just have to deal with it at the end of the day. So yeah, that's my thoughts about mental health.
Thank you. And Nelson, I was totally kidding about you going last. I was
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm glad you said it. To me, so mental health, that term has really just been thrown around, and we as a society have really messed it up and distorted it. Really, mental health is just a psychological or emotional state. I mean, at its core, that's what it is. So it doesn't necessarily indicate the presence of a mental illness. Your mental health can be messed up if you just had a bad day. If you just been down for the day, that day your mental health wasn't good. I think because it's been so heavily stigmatized, we automatically associate it with depression. We associate it with anxiety. We associate it with needing to be on medication or anything like that. And I think we need to kind of take a step back and realize there's levels to it. There's tiers in mental health. Some people need tier 1 services where it's just preventative things, where it's just talking with somebody. Sometimes they need like tier 3, where it's like heading into the medication and heading into working with a psychiatrist or working with a therapist on long-term care. And then there's also the separation between having a mental illness and having a personality disorder. It's not the same thing. Somebody can, and even if we're not even going that far, someone that's had a sudden life change, and like they got fired from their job and they've been depressed for the past month, how we approach them. I mean, because technically they could be going through a depression, but because we as a society have kind of hardened to those types of things, we kind of don't look at that as like pain. And I think that's I'm kind of going to be all over the place as I'm gathering my thoughts, but I just think that we need to understand that mental health is a very broad term. And I think we as a society and a community need to start getting a little bit more nuanced when we're talking about what's going on with each other, whether it is if we're dealing with something severe, like we're dealing with like really depression and we're dealing with suicidal ideations, or are we dealing with, I've been down for the past couple months because things haven't been going my way, or to, just anything in between. But what's really bothering me is that everybody has kind of dipped their toe in the water in dealing with mental health. So we're seeing a lot of other professions and people that'll learn a little bit about what entails mental health and then create a whole job or a whole way of approaching it. And it just ends up muddying the water a lot more. So it becomes a very confusing thing.
That's interesting that you say that, Nelson, about losing the job. I met a gentleman and he asked me out on a date, and he kept calling me like all day, and I'm thinking like, what, are you not at work? You don't have a job? And he's like, oh no, actually I got fired. And I was like, oh, you probably shouldn't be dating. You should probably be looking for a new job. But he was like, no, I'm taking time to heal. And I was like, what? I thought it was like, I thought it was funny, but when you're saying it, he said you have to think about it like this. When you're with a person for a long time and you break up in that relationship, you need time to heal. He's like, why is it any different from a job? You've invested, you spend all this time, all these hours, you give to this company, and then they just fire you. He said, I need time to process that. And I was just like, how much time do you need before, because you think you're a grown man, you've got to pay the bills. What are you going to do? You expect to just hop right back into it. Like, no, you can't just take time to heal. But that is a form of,
I think losing a job is like worse than losing a relationship, because you're losing money. So I don't know, that's weird.
But you don't think about it like that. You're like, okay,
With your identity.
Mm-hmm.
It's heavy.
Yeah. That's pretty deep.
And if you get fired too, you also got to look at why you got fired. And so I like the fact that he took some time to kind of reflect on that, because one thing, if we just go into panic mode, find the next job, we might be bringing some of the same things that caused us to get fired the first time into the next job. So reflection is just something that all of us need to, we should reflect on ourselves every day. Take a look at how we felt like we did for the day, things we did wrong, things we did right. Like that's a small thing that we can do to constantly keep our mental health in check. But if you have the savings to be able to kind of take a couple of months off and enjoy the unemployment for a while, just do what you got to do.
Yeah. No, and I understand it now, but like when he told me at the time, I was like, that's not what a man's supposed to do. It's supposed to provide. You got to get back out there. You got to get another job. Like, that's what men do. But in actuality, a man's mental health is very important. You can't even perform well or even interview well if you could. That could be a break in your self confidence. So you might not even feel that you deserve a new job until you like build yourself back up. So I mean, I understand it more so now, but when he first said it, I was like, that sounds weird. Never, never heard of someone trying to recover from a job breakup, but
You
that
know
was a
that also brings up a interesting point. Some people don't have the ability to do what he did, because I hear what he's saying about taking time, and that's best case scenario, because most of America doesn't have savings to put off trying to get another job immediately. I don't know if anybody's ever been on unemployment, but I've had that paperwork come through for people I've had to let go of before, and I've been getting yelled at and cursed out like, this is less than half of what I made. I was like, really? So yeah, some people just don't have the luxury, unfortunately, to take that space and time to heal, and of course that will just compound the problem altogether. So,
interesting. Raul, did you have a chance to speak on this?
Well, you know that I quit a job and decided to take a couple months off because I had what they call a fuck you fund, and I implemented it. But once what Trigger Mike says, right, the majority of Americans don't have that, guys. That is an incredible privilege to be able to say, well, fuck you, I'll do what I want for a couple of months. And I didn't think of it as mental healing because I was the one doing the breakup. But that is a very interesting analogy, Dr. Nelson, about how it does correlate to relationships, because as you stated, you can bring a lot of the bad stuff. If you were in a bad relationship, you could bring a lot of bad stuff into your next working relationship. So that was very interesting for me. But no, Kelly knows that I was one of those people that was just like, I'm going to take some time off. And then somebody called me up and found a job for me and everything was fine. But no, most people can't even do that. I'm kind of embarrassed that I was able to do that. It makes me seem like I'm super privileged. I'm not. I just am good saving money. He always
acts like he's broke. Oh, I don't know if I can do it. I'm like, we know you can do it.
Money is doing what it's supposed to do in different places, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the mental health and where you're from and what your background is on it. I do have a minor in psychology, but once again, I did not go far enough down there to where I learned the proper techniques. I'm honestly here, I'll try to contribute as much as I can to the conversation, but I'm learning from all of you because I came up very much in the, a man doesn't have these problems. And so I'm here to learn some of the different points of view, much like Saira's dad. That was pretty much my experience as well. Toughen up, get to it. And it actually did work for me because, I had some periods where I was, depressed or manic or whatever, and I was able to handle it. And now I don't have any issues. And I never saw a therapist. I never did anything. I just kind of bullied my way through. And I learned on my own how to regulate my emotions and not allow outside factors to affect my mental well-being so much. But once again, I don't think that's things that most people can do. Most people need to go somewhere and get some help. And so I'm here to learn a lot about how the proper channels would be, because I believe my experience was not the way it should go.
Fatima, did you have a chance to go?
I just want to add a little bit more. I agree with what Indy said about her Caribbean side. Like my South Asian side is kind of like that too. It's a big stigma, mental health. And so we just kind of think it's non-existent. It still is that way, unfortunately, in India. Just to add, I would think like a good positive mental state would be just like waking up in the morning and being happy and having goals, not having any barriers to those goals, just, being, having that positive attitude about life and things like that. That's what I would think of like a positive mental state. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned my immigrant parents. Dad was super strict, just like Saira said as well. And so, when we're little, we think, our parents can do no wrong. But then, when you grow older, you kind of see all those things. And there were, abusive, and also just, it was just like my way or the highway. Respect was a really big thing. And that's big in Asian culture as well. In the Asian culture, it's about like, I'm sure everyone knows Asians are good at math, that kind of thing. So it's like really about, high performing, so if it's 0 to 100, nothing in between, no gray area. And so that's, it's a lot of dismissiveness. And, yeah, so it's just a lot of crazy stuff.
Thank you. So did everyone have a chance to speak on that? I don't want to make sure I didn't skip anyone. Sugar Mike, did you go? He went first. All right. So we kind of touched on this already. If anyone else has anything further to add, the next question was, how do you feel your culture deals with mental health? Because I know every culture is a little bit different. I'll go last because I have a few things to say about my culture. But
Caribbean culture, I've seen some really crazy stuff that they do, who might have been like going through mental health issues, like even like up to the point like putting anointing oil on them and like taking them
almost like a possession.
exorcism.
Like they were trying to
Yes, like an exorcism, because somebody might be schizophrenic, undiagnosed, and they are having
get the demon out.
disassociation. Yes, and they're like, this is a demon, like they need to take him to the church right now and like get the demon out. Or like someone was a heavy drug user and they're trying to bring this person, a drug user, off the street into the church. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, and I guess for me, it created like a sense of fear. Like, oh, you have to appear perfect all the time, right? Because you don't want your family to think that you have a demon, like, or something is wrong with you. They're trying to sage you and, put oil on you at Thanksgiving or, whatever it might be. So I think when I got in tune with that side of my mental illness or mental health, right, I disassociated myself with my dad's side of the family. Because I was like, if I tell them, hey, I got to take my meds, they're going to be like, meds? Like, no, you need to get a Bible. So,
Yeah, I
the
can.
whole
I'm sorry. Were you done? Yeah. So I can second that. I guess the question is for me. Let me phrase it. How do Nigerians deal with mental health? They don't. They don't at all. It is severely stigmatized. All right, and that's because in their eyes, and I think this is actually most cultures, most foreign cultures other than the West, this stuff is shameful. To them, it's shameful because they don't look at the issue of the individual. They're worried about the optics to the family, right? So they are very judgmental in these cultures. Okay, so if you have a child that's schizophrenic, child that's bipolar, they believe, and other people in the community will believe it's the fault of the parents somehow. You didn't do something. That's why your kid turned out this way. It could be completely natural, chemical, biological reason, as we know, can happen, right? So they're doing studies right now about pregnant women taking Tylenol and it having a negative effect on the fetus to bring out, mental issues, into adulthood and childhood and all of that. But nope, in these cultures, they don't want it spoken about. That everybody is worried about the negative optics that come from it. I have a cousin. It's so bad that I don't even know what her diagnosis is. We just know. I believe she has autism. If I had to just kind of say, okay, these were the behaviors that she had. She does have one of those type of behavioral disorders. I don't want to say like lower functioning, but it's definitely not a high functioning case. And we didn't. I haven't seen her 20 years. How old am I? No, 22 years. I haven't seen her.
What do you
They
mean
did,
you haven't seen her? Like she's
no,
hidden?
they didn't let her come out of the house. If there were birthday parties, she didn't attend. One of the parents stayed home. Um, yeah, they didn't bring her out. She's basically in the house. Yeah, with her what was it called? But person that stays at the home to care for her, that the insurance yeah, that's how bad it can be in other than Western cultures. They really don't. They will hide that child. I know that seems very, you know, um, severe, but I don't think it's uncommon at all.
Wow.
Something that I've noticed, at least as far as the West goes, is almost like the quick fix for everything. We could look at, I'm not gonna go down that road, but just the pharmaceutical industry. This is just my opinion, not the opinion of the platform or anyone else. But I just think, especially young people, are just they're overly medicated. I was put, and I'll be candid, I was put on Paxil, and Trigger Mike, I don't know if you know of Paxil. You can't be pregnant with it, and and they never told me about the withdrawal symptoms, that I'm chemically dependent, and I've missed a day of it because it has a really short half-life. I've missed a day of it before because I didn't have it, and it was terrible. I've already tried to get off of it once, but I was a senior in college, so I just kept going. But it's like, I think just in America anyway, people just want a quick thing. They don't want to exercise. Plenty of studies. I did a lot of, I guess, English stuff on, my topic was exercise and the effects on depression, from sleep. They just want that quick fix, that pill, but so it's like, I think that's one of the issues in how at least American culture approaches this topic. Well, really how they approach a lot of other things, but at least as mental health goes.
So let me add to what you said too. That is the situation I believe a lot of foreigners find themselves in. Yes, it's stigmatized, and yes, they don't believe in mental issues, but they also notice how heavily medicated Western American children are and how quick they are to diagnose. So they also use that to say, no, they won't do that to my child. So they kind of become overprotective. Right. So, it's weird. And the bad part is that all the children that do need help fall between the cracks. Right. So that's terrible.
That's so true, Trigger Mike, because my nephew I believe he has heavy autism. My sister, even though she sees it, she like turns a blind eye to it. So now my nephew is older than my daughter. My daughter is very fluent. She's reading books, like she's on level 18. She's in grade 1, like very, very intelligent. However, he's older than her and he's doing very little. So I can see like the difference. And, the thing is, she's not providing the support that he needs now. And she's going to feel it in the future. Because, yeah, some kids may need the medication. You don't ever know, right? But it's like there's a very thin line as to like, hey, do they need medication or do they just need like a little talk or like some support, some guidance, right?
You know what? Something that I've noticed. I met a family like 5 years ago, and they said the kid had autism. But if they wouldn't have said that, I wouldn't have noticed that he had any type of issue. In my mind, he was just spoiled kid. Like if I compare it to a kid in my country, he was just spoiled. He will scream, he will throw at things, he will kick their his parents, just because like if they didn't say, but then they will just like, oh no, he has autism, so that's why he's acting that way. But in my mind, I was like, I don't know. It made me suspicious because I've seen an autism kid from here, and it wasn't acting that way. So I don't want to say or sound not empathetic enough because there's different type of autisms, and now I know that. But at the moment, I was like, that looks more like a spoiled kid. But it could also be that a lot of parents rather take the kid to the doctor and say, okay, he has autism or something and depression or whatever, instead of working with the kid, because it requires effort from the parents. It requires dedications. It requires for you to be present. It requires for you to be teaching them. It requires patience. Like, it's not that easy. So, and I'm saying not just in specific culture, but in general, like for a parent, it will be so easy to go and just give them a pill. I even heard my daughter saying to my nephew, is there a pill that we can give him to calm him down? And I'm like, what? No, let's take him to the park. He's going to run. His battery's going to go down, and then he's going to want to take a nap. That's what you do. I was like, where have you heard someone giving a pill to a kid? And he's like, my dad does to my brother. And I was like, wow. Like they give him something to put him to sleep. I've never done that. Never. So that's how you're like, causing this unbalance in people, on kids. And then they grow up, being unstable like this.
That's incredibly interesting, Sarah. And I wanted to bring up, all of you have brought up a lot of different points that kind of equal a very interesting philosophy, because psychology is a soft science, number one. There is a hard science in the chemical, makeup of the brain and how certain drugs can help it. And then Coach K was talking about how certain, proper amount of exercise, doing certain things can be mentally refreshing and allow you to do it. I believe that's the type of therapy. What you're discussing of how parents can help their children that may have what we would diagnose as a minor form of psychological problems is really just can be treated with proper parenting. That could be a quote unquote type of therapy, the same way going to a counselor would be. Instead, it's just the parents doing the job. And it's a very interesting line that I do not believe there is a hard evidence-based dissection of what is exactly the right thing to do, because some people think it's exactly right to give them a drug. Some people think it's exactly right to teach them to toughen up and get through it on their own. Each of these could be considered treatment options. I don't know if we as a species have gotten down the same, like we know how to do a heart transplant. We can do that. That's pretty straightforward.
Because you can see it.
What's that?
Because you can see it. We
Correct.
do have hands and stuff, but it's not as easy when you see something sticking out of your skin or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yes. And so the problems with mental health, and I bet you Nelson can come in harder on this, is the fact that it's so hard to properly diagnose the correct treatment, because in plenty of different cultures, the correct treatment still works, which is the dad just goes out and runs them until they get tired and they go to sleep, and they properly train them so that they're not going to be spoiled brats. But where in other cultures, being a spoiled brat could be considered caused by a mental problem that needs to be fixed with a pill. I find that incredibly interesting, that there are multiple paths for which we can use to make what we as a general society conclude to be a well-adjusted person.
Yeah, I think what everyone's saying has been spot on. I would say that, speaking back to the original part of the question, how we feel like our culture deals with it, speaking as an African American, I believe that we are one of the worst in terms of how we approach mental health. And I think that's because we've become such a blend of all these other subcultures and ideologies and things like that. So we have the religious side, where we try to, just like some others mentioned, we try to pray things out of people. We say it's a demon, make them go to church every day and think that's going to fix it. We have the family side of things, where it's a dysfunctional household and we try to beat discipline into the kids. We do run them all day, or we try to get them on some type of medication because the behaviors we're seeing from them are not convenient for us. So we have to medicate them to bring them down, instead of actually trying to find what the source is. I just think, even inside of our relationships, the way that we approach relating to one another, we've become such a detached society. Everything is about money, power, respect. There's nothing we've really lost empathy, lost humility, like those very core foundational things that make us who we are. We're not instilling them into kids anymore, and we're not even practicing these things ourselves. So we're opening ourselves up to various types of problems where we are really opening ourselves up to a lot of personality disorders. And that, I think that's one thing that's being that is kind of creeping up on us as a community. We're seeing a lot of people that have diagnosable narcissistic personality, borderline personality, histrionic, all of these different disorders that you wouldn't be able to pinpoint, based on, looking at depression or anxiety or something like that. You have to really know a person and watch their personality traits and their behaviors to start to understand what's going on with them. But we're not taking into account all of the things that we are doing to exacerbate the problem, to over medicate the problem, to pray away the problem. And then even inside of even in genders, the way we mess our kids' mental health up just by our approach on what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. So now we have these strong ideals of masculinity. So no crying. I don't want to see any kind of emotion out of you. You're a man, suck it up, tough it up. When you don't even know if the reason you're seeing the emotion is because of a chemical imbalance that's causing, it's like it's like your mind is betraying your body and vice versa. It's like, I can't tell you why I'm so hurt and so sad, because it doesn't make sense, because nothing happened to me to make me feel so incredibly sad. But my body is telling me I have this deep pit of hopelessness in me, and it's hurting me even more because I can't even communicate to you why I feel this way, other than just, this is what my body is giving me right now. And because we don't understand those types of things and dig deeper into them, we say, oh, well, all you have to do is, and we go outside and exercise. All you got to do is just smile all day. And, it's like we come up with these little ways of helping people. And we are notorious in the Black community for feeling like we can solve every problem. I'm getting so tired, especially in the relationship side, when we're dealing with personality disorders and things like that. The rise of all of these coaches, not you, Coach K, I'm talking about Black community right now.
Hey, I think that would be a great conversation though too. So you can, because I have a background in social work, so I've seen it from so many different.
You're fine.
No. Well, yeah, I'm not even like credential like all over the place, but I know what you mean. So lay it on us. I don't even care.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying that because I've been watching a lot of content and I'm seeing a lot of these coaches that take a minute aspect of learning about reading a article about childhood attachment, and all of a sudden now
I almost said that attachment.
Now all of a sudden you're offering coaching classes on helping women deal with things and helping men deal with things, not realizing that you might open up a can of worms that you're not prepared to deal with, and you might just make the problem 10 times worse, and then end up getting yourself sued because you don't realize that you are actually caring for a person's life. We don't really realize that because it's such a soft science, but psychologically we have the power to destroy somebody if we approach this the wrong way. And I'm really tired of what I've been seeing around these YouTube streets with this stuff.
I agree with that, which is why I'm glad that you came on the show, because we can speculate all day about what we think and how we feel, but it's nice to have someone that actually has a background in it and understands it from beginning to end. So we can have like a professional who's an expert on subject chime in. So I could say something that might be a little off, and I would prefer if you correct me. Does that make sense? I don't want to just be like, you know what, I'm married, so now I'm a relationship professional and I'm going to teach everyone how to get married. Really? Like, no.
Just because I'm married, right? And a lot of people think that a person that is not married shouldn't be giving married advices. And it's not an advice. It's more like my opinion. So people tend to confuse that, and say a lot of people actually think that their opinion is a fact too. And I hate it so much.
Hey, I got my marriage degree from YouTube University. All right, y'all chill out.
No, I think it's fine it's fine if you're married to give advice, but we also need to look at it and take it for a grain of salt too. Like, what works in your marriage, just because you've been married for 20 years that doesn't mean that you have the blueprint for a successful marriage. You have the blueprint
Mhm.
for a successful marriage that works based on your personality type and your wife's personality type. But everyone is different. We go through different things. We're at different socioeconomic statuses and levels, where we have different families of origin. All of that stuff comes into play. So for someone to say, just because I've been able to remain successfully married, that doesn't mean that you know how to tell someone else how to do the same thing.
And I've also noticed that people, both sides, the person talking and the listener, they're not very objective in those type of things. So yeah, even if you're married and giving advice on marriage, be very objective and kind of be like, well, that's my marriage. There are some things that are basically general, but these are maybe specific to my marriage. And then we have other people who are suffering so bad out there of that they want specific advice. They want to listen, and they always want the answer now. It's not the process. We're trying to, I'm objectively giving you the process, but you want the answer. You want to hang on to one thing I say and let it be the fix for your life. So, I think that's what we see a lot of.
I do. I agree with that. I did actually look up the definition according to Google. So you can correct me if I'm wrong. For mental health, it says mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make healthy choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood and adolescence through adulthood. Does that sound accurate?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what Google said. So I always like to have like a definition, a base of where we're starting, so I know exactly what we're talking about.
Yep.
I wanted to say really quick that's really good, especially adolescents, and I know Nelson can definitely talk about that. But so a way that I like to look at it, and Nelson, you tell me if I'm off, but it's like we have, and this is just a broad, like, I guess, analogy, but it's like we have personal training, for example, to help someone who doesn't have heart disease, doesn't have diabetes, whatever, but they want to work on their health. And then eventually, it's going to be preventative and things like that. But it's like we don't have that for mental health. And it's like when someone is maybe diagnosed or maybe not, it's like, what do you do about it? That's something that has really drawn me to the profession I'm in now, because it bugs me when not all therapy is the same, but it bugged me that I was never really taught, maybe I didn't pay attention. Okay, I'm feeling this way, but why? And I'm doing these things. Why? Like those actions. What am I feeling? And what am I thinking? And can I change that thinking? Actually, I can. So it's like things like that, that's actually concrete and that can be applied right away. But I just like to compare it to personal training as far as mental health goes. But after that leave it to the professionals. So,
well, hold that, Coach K, because that is one of the questions. So I do want to get into that. Okay. The next question, because I know that there is a big difference in the way we handle mental health now versus the way our parents and our grandparents did. So I kind of want to discuss the shift of importance for mental health awareness. I could start if and no one else wants to go, or if you have something to say. I know for my parents, the way they were very open to us expressing how we felt. They were very understanding, and they wanted to have the conversation with us because they felt as children they were shut down. Like, children are to be seen and not heard. We don't want to know what you're thinking. We don't know how you feel. Be quiet. If another adult called and told something, whether it was a teacher or a neighbor, it was the adults were. So they didn't really have a chance to have a voice as a child. They didn't care how they felt. And this is their generation. So they were very adamant about us being able to express how we felt. And they were like, well, even if my teacher would call home, they were like, well, what happened? I want to know your side of the story so I can get the full picture. Tell me what happened, but you have to be honest about it. And like, how are you feeling? What's going on? Every day I would come home. How was school? Did anything happen? Is everything going on? They were very open with us in communication, and they wanted to know what we thought. Even after we watched a movie, my dad would be like, well, how'd you feel about that? What do you think about it? What are your thoughts? What did you get from it? You know, he always wanted to make sure we were thinkers and we could express how we felt. But I know that that is not what they got when they were children. So they were almost like on the opposite side of that spectrum. So
You know what? That's a great example, and we see it now. What I have noticed is that younger, like the newest generation, try not to abuse their kids, like not to use the, whipping and like, using the belt and all the stuff, which is, I used to get my ass whooped every day. I'm not gonna lie. Like, oh, you didn't do the dishes, la chancla. So I would get it like, but honestly, nowadays I feel like I don't do it with my daughter. I don't want to do it. I take the patience to understand what's going on, why she's not understanding my request and things like that. And I'm more patient, but because I understand that abuse is abuse. And not just because of that, but I also remember my parents saying, oh, I do it because I love you. But then I went into an abusive relationship where I suffer from domestic violence, and this person used to tell me, because I love you. And then I used to believe that that's what it was. So I went through therapy like 3 years after that relationship. So that got me understanding that it was something from my childhood trauma in a way, and it's linked. It's linked. So we don't think this affects them, but then if we don't even explain our kids, and then we as parents tend to underestimate our kids. Just because they're little, we think that they don't understand. And it's not like that. They actually get it. So when you explain it the right way and use the right words to them, they will understand it. Explain the whys, how, and everything step by step. And if you do that, it's easier for them to do what you're asking for them to understand the why they need to do it at the time that you're asking for, and the consequences. But before, it was like, oh, I'm just gonna whoop your butt and then I'm gonna to send you to your room, but without explanation of nothing. So it was not like I'm gonna explain the reason why I'm doing it. And then it's just, I was just being abused and I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's kind of like the biggest example I have now, and especially in my culture, because here for us it's still very normal. We do have now a law that if you see a parent kind of like abusing their kid, you can call and say, but here Latinos, we think that chancla is the remedy for everything. I think my mom could probably throw me my chancla nowadays. Like she wouldn't care. Even my dad, like sometimes he's like, it feels like he wants to do it with my daughter. And I'm like, nope, no, you're not gonna do that. But because he still has that mentality, but we have to change that and kind of see how this affects when you're an adult.
So yeah, I think we're living in a time of two extremes of everybody currently living, which is, I think the baby boomers are the oldest, right? So the baby boomers and Gen X, they were way too much. That made millennials and Gen Z, in my opinion, do way too little. So right now you see, and I'm not even talking in this form of spanking. I just mean the passiveness, the passive nature of parents, and the self-diagnosis of, all, like parents are way too passive with their children. So hopefully Gen, whatever the next thing, double A, maybe they'll get it right. But I believe we're definitely living in a time of two extremes. And I believe that I think it was what Kelly said. I think there is a medium to it. There absolutely is. I believe me and my wife are going to achieve that, because she is trying to do the whole Gen Z thing with the kids. Like, oh, she's very soft, but that's her nature. All right. I was raised by Nigerians. Okay. I got my tail whooped by surprise. I didn't even know I did nothing. Somebody else did it. And I'm in my room like, so I got whooped one time coming from basketball practice because my brother did something and I was supposed to catch it before he did it. Right. So I come from that generation. So hopefully, the one thing that I do see much value in is that when I do discipline my children, I do need to go to them and go over not even why it happened, what they did, how it made me feel. why it's important for them to understand why this is wrong, why I will not tolerate it again. Now I even look to see if I did too much, I'll even apologize to them, and let them know I shouldn't have had that reaction. But I'm not. It's not really a "cause I said so" type of thing. I'm trying to get out of that. That's how my parents were. It's really a listen. You're going to get discipline from me, and it's going to be consistent. But I do want them. I do want to partner with them in a sense to where it's like, listen, I really want to partner with you in your behavior modification, right? I don't want it to be just what I said and everything that I want to happen. I want you to understand not only how I feel about what you did, but how you feel. I want to process that, right? What led up to it and everything. So I feel like my kids are covered that way, right? So because they got the nurturing mom, she got that down pat, right? So I think that where Kelly said, asking them how they feel and never really breaking that trust they have in me, right? And I feel like that trust is broken. I'm gonna tell you, my parents did it to me because at some point, especially as a teenager, you realize you're just getting beat for no reason. You're getting beat because they're mad, and it broke a lot of trust. Like, man, y'all are great parents, but in this way, y'all kind of terrible. So I don't want to break that trust with them, and I'm gonna do my best to try to nurture that relationship as long as they're in this house.
I think the discipline matters, like, when it's necessary, right? Because a lot of times, like, I thank my parents for sometimes disciplining me the way they did, even though it was a little extreme, but they probably had it done to them and whatever, right? But when I came to Canada, because back home there's no laws against like not hitting your kids, right? They hit you at school, they hitting me with rulers if you don't do your homework. So I have to make sure my homework was on time. Like, that discipline came here. So when I came here, everything was so slack. The whole public system was so slack. I was like, oh my God, I learned this in like grade 1, where they were teaching it here at the grade 4. Like, so it was like a little bit more slower, but like, I appreciate that. However, like the worst, the bad parts, the traumas, because we always gonna have like our memories are more prominent, or like we don't really remember the happiest parts of our lives, more so the traumas, right? The traumas always take over. So I feel like it carried on over to my adulthood, and with like parenting my child in the beginning, because I was a new mom, and like stress came on that. Like, there was hormones, like a lot of like a lot of emotions. But however, I had to catch myself, because sometimes you have to like take accountability, because I wouldn't have known that I was like, I really had to like step back for a minute and be like, hey, I'm acting like my parents. Like, this is not, I saw the fear in my daughter's eyes, right? I don't want her to fear me like that. However, I caught myself being accountable, and like I took mindful classes, and I wanted to share that. Like, there's in our community, we have the luxury of going, like, checking for these things, because back home in third world countries, they don't have this support, right? So here we can actually like seek it if you catch yourself, because no one can tell you that you have a mental illness without you actually like accepting it, right? You have to accept it, and then you can get help. A lot of times we think they're being like they're belittling us or degrading us, whichever way they come, right? So yeah, I think we should kind of like step back sometimes and like look at it, the whole situation.
I want to ask Nelson real quick. Do you ever, I'm sure you've been a professional for a long time, but do your loved ones ever expect you to like act perfect, like to never have a bad day because you're a counselor? Like, how dare you? Do you get that ever?
Yeah, you become everyone's counselor, and it really sucks because you can't really be vulnerable around your family that much. So that's, to me, that's why I maintain my own therapist. That's why I always make sure I have people in my life that don't see me in that light, because once anybody kind of knows, once you dive into this profession, you become the end all be all for how to deal with anything in life, and everybody will just call you and dump on you like everything that's going on in their life, and you're just expected to just take it and really not blink. But yeah, it is very much like that in my family, and I ran into the same problem as a as a young and budding counselor, like once I got my license and started learning things, I was all too eager to diagnose my family and figure out what the heck was going on with them. So I kind of set myself up for failure a little bit by just listening to everybody's story and learning why my mother acts the way she does, why my father did. And they were the generation that was before me, my grandparents and my parents, those were very tight-lipped, generations where they really did not talk about traumatic events that happened in our life. And as a result, we received the results of their hurt. So all the behaviors that were dysfunctional that we saw from them and that we took as like, this is the way that we should be, or the way things are, is all the result of them not dealing with their own stuff and thinking that it's not impacting the way they're parenting or the way anything is going. And we became a messed up generation. And Trigger Mike said a great thing in terms of being on witnessing like two extremes is they were so tight-lipped that you couldn't go to them with anything. And this generation now is so loose with everything. Everything has become about your feelings and being, having to be happy all the time. And so we've just gone from two extremes. Both don't make sense. Neither one of them are good. Balance is what we needed, but everything kind of just had a trickle effect from generation to generation.
I agree with that. It's like the opposite, because I do think that there should be a balance. It shouldn't be, everything. Because I do feel like this generation is in a way is soft. Like everything's about your feelings. You get so hurt so quickly, so offended so easily, when they just used to be like tough and strong back then. But also there were things that they weren't allowed to address, or they didn't even know to address, or weren't allowed to talk about, or things were taboo. Like, oh, you said sex. You're not allowed to say that word out in public. Now everybody is just so free to be me and talks about everything in a disgusting, perverted way. So it's like there is a fine balance. There is a healthy balance. Like, how do you achieve that?
And I think because now everything is, I can't offend this person, we can't do this, we can't say this. We've lost resilience. So now we don't do well with coping with things like someone saying something bad about us, or someone not liking us, or not getting praised on our jobs. Now we're starting to take everything to heart, and now everybody in society is basically walking on eggshells, trying to make sure that they always say the perfect thing, they always do the right thing, always be non-offensive, rather than realizing, no, there's certain things that we need to learn how to deal with just a nasty person. Like that's, those are coping mechanisms. Those are, just signs of, that's how you build resiliency. You know what I mean? That's how you build integrity and humility and things like that. So yeah, it's two extremes.
It is.
There's an old saying that hard times breed hard men. Hard men accomplish their goals and create good times. Good times breed soft men. Soft men bring hard times. And I don't want to go too far down the category of course, corporal punishment to your children is correct. No, once again, I'm going to reiterate that I think that our race is still very young at figuring this shit out. And so we do not know the exact proper way to formulate a young human to become proper in society. We are learning, and we're getting better at it. But the young kids, like you said, you feel like they're soft, but if you talk to them, some of them, I think there's a lot of validity in more understanding and expressing and allowing a good conversation. Saira brought it up about how she doesn't want to do that to her kids that were done to her. It did work because she's a strong woman. She's got her shit together. But could there be a more moderate solution? You guys have seen my whatever that image is that comes up when I'm gone. Balance is an important thing for me. And I believe if we can find that middle ground, sort of like what Mike's saying as far as where his wife's going to do the more nurturing effect and he's going to do the more disciplinary effect. but I don't know if beating our kids is the right way to do it. I my parents beat me, and my dad did. I hold resentment because of that, and I don't think that that's a good way to do it. It does create results because I did well, but I think we can get the results going a little bit more towards the Gen Z philosophy of being more understanding. But you're right, Nelson. If we go too far, we breed soft men who will bring hard times. This is a very complex and hard subject that even those that have doctorates, don't have it all figured out yet. So this is an interesting topic, Kelly.
So I will say that I do believe we more so do have it figured out, but we live in a free nation, so it's hard to implement anything without giving people choice in the matter. I will tell you, there are some ways in the military they figured this out, right? And there are a few things that I've learned in my life experience. I can say I pledged a frat and I went through boot camp. Those two things I will tell you can make, well, I'm a man, so I have to speak from this perspective, can make a man, right? And one of the things that I really love, I was injured while I was in boot camp. And like I was one of the top, I was a port watch section leader. There are only 4 section leaders out of like 75 people. So I was really high speed doing a thing and I actually hurt myself. And then the recruit division commander came over to me and was like, do blank and blank. And I'm like, oh, dang, sorry, ABH2, whatever his rating was. I can't, I strained my leg or my ankle or whatever was wrong with me. He looked at me and was like, there are plenty ways I can make you uncomfortable without touching you. Like, and that to me, what he's basically saying is, I'm going to get the discipline out of you every single day. I'm going to make you work. I'm going to put you under duress so I can bring the best out of you. But I don't have to touch you or physically whip you or do anything like that. And I felt like that was profound because what he basically was saying is that he's not letting me take a day off. He wants me to stay sharp so I can stay section leader, because of what that will do for me in my career and the accountability measures it will give me. And that I'm trying to pass that on to my children to where it's like, I don't need to put my hands on you when I'm upset. I feel like a lot of parents today, they aren't mentally capable of thinking past corporal punishment, like really doing the work of saying, what else can I do? What else can I research? How can I get the most out of this kid without destroying them by putting my hands on them? And most of them don't have the capacity to think past that because maybe the neighbors are doing it also. They feel justified in what they're doing. But I feel like there are many measures, like, whether within the military, like they have figured out a way to bring, like these Navy SEALs and these people, there's some high speed people. They figured out some stuff.
David Goggins is an animal, but there was a bunch that I was able to take away from his book. I'm sure at least I hope a lot of you have read it, but yeah, it's incredible, especially what the mind can do.
They've unlocked the human psyche. So all I'll say is that this was something more high speed. This was a school. They wanted me to try out for something called Special Operations Corpsman Program. And I was just a reservist. So I was like, nah, no, thank you. They were like, just come. We train before everybody else trains. Come train with us 4 a.m. These dudes were tying like 25 or 50 pound weights to each other's legs in the pool and going to the bottom. I was like, no, thank you. Nah, I'm good. I can't do it. And every day they were giving me like little mental exercises like, you can't do it or you think you can't, right? Listen, by the time I was done with that training, I could hold my breath for almost 6 minutes. I couldn't do it for a minute and a half. It was certain things that, like I said, that when they unlock your mind, it will take you to a capacity you never thought you could reach. But
I will say
we can't mandate everybody to do that, right? If it was up to me, I would.
Only. I will say really quick, I was actually lifting at the gym, and I was near my last set, and I don't know if you guys ever did this when you were younger, but you said, if you do this, you'll win $1 million, or see how long someone can stand. I remember walking on hot sand in Michigan in So I was like, you know what? If you push through this set and get like 10 reps or whatever, you'll win $1 million. And I freaking pushed through that stuff, you know, when I really was going to like stop at like 5 or something, you know. It is really interesting. But of course, again, not everyone is going to have that. But I hope people listening will maybe try that on. I don't know. It's just really powerful stuff.
Has everyone had a chance to chime in on this particular?
I'll just add a little bit, just again about back to the generational thing. I think I touched on this. You know, I grew up in a kind of a traditional household where, you know, dad was, you know, head of the house kind of thing, the man of the house. And so, you know, my mom would always kind of just, you know, cater to his needs. And like when he would come home, he'd want, you know, a hot meal at the table ready. And, you know, it's 7 of us, 7 kids. And so, you know, we're just, and it was really big about respect and all those things. And so, you know, our thoughts and you know, how was our day and all of those things kind of were trivial. We really were not used to talking about them. Everything was okay. I remember when I just got, you know, in my relationship too and everything. And, you know, at that time, but, you know, my husband, he's like, oh, you always just said it's okay. Everything's okay. Cause that's kind of how I was, you know, trained, you know, to be, is everything is okay. I didn't really have an opinion on things. And so, and then, you know, with my husband, you know, my dad, was a lot about respect, but also the beating and all that, like a lot of the, you know, raising with the iron fist. I think he said that's how his father, you know, raised him. And he just kind of did the same. And so, you know, I feel like now most of my siblings are millennials, like 2 of them are Gen Z, but, you know, we are just, you know, trying to do better. You know, 4 of us have kids. And so we're just trying to be better parents. We have a lot of talks. My elder sister, she is a therapist as well, but she's I think TLLP. She just started, you know, with her therapy. But again, like, you know, I go to therapy as well. And so it's just really important to have these discussions and talks, trying not to repeat the cycle, do better for our kids. I always ask my kids, you know, how they're feeling, and mommy made a mistake and things like that, because that was not, you know, my parents, like, you could never tell them that they made a mistake. You know, it's just say sorry, you know, how dare you say that? So, you know, I'm not perfect. Parents are not perfect. And so I do like to kind of say that, but of course, you know, I definitely want to have the discipline as well. But I don't know who said this, but yeah, I mean, like, when you're raising with the iron fist, yes, you get the results, but at what cost, right? Because then there's all this trauma, all these things that we're carrying on, you know, without even noticing. So it's a lot.
It is. And I would say that this kind of is going to segue into the next question. I was raised by both my parents. They were married until my father passed away. They were married for 38 years, but my father was a pastor. So a lot of the spiritual things that everyone's discussing, I experienced that too. Like a lot of things, there was prayer involved. A lot of things were deemed a spirit, like, you know, oh, you're being controlled by the spirit of lust or laziness, you know. So it's like, so I heard a lot of that stuff too. But also he was also a counselor. So a lot of people would call him, and I would hear him get a lot of results. So I kind of started talking to him and listening to him as I got older. And he would always say, Shayna, I'm sorry, my real name, Kelly. He would always say, you want a quick fix. He said, how long did it take you to get into this predicament? He said, okay, that's how long it's going to take you to get out. I can't give you an answer just like this. You have to work through it. There's a process. I can't just say do this and everything's going to be golden. But I do appreciate, we were disciplined physically, but he did it more from the biblical perspective. He was like, the Bible says you have to spank your children. If I don't spank you, I don't love you. If I spare the rod, I spoil the child. And there was all these scriptures that said, yeah, I got to spank you, but I'm doing it because I love you. I'm like, dang, can you just love me less? Please. But you know, he never did it angry. He would always sit us down he would say, okay, so this is what you did, and I have to discipline you. I'm not angry with you, but when you do an action, there's a consequence for your action, and you need to be aware of that. He said, so I'm gonna spank you. I'm not mad at you. I still love you. And then he would spank us and be like, okay, let's go have ice cream. Like, it was just like, that was the discipline. So I didn't have resentment towards him for the spankings. I mean, I got lots of spankings.
I will be okay with that.
Like, he wasn't like, no, I'm mad, go to your room after the spanking. He was like, okay, let's watch a movie. Like, he was just like, this was the punishment for the action. So I never felt, I was never jaded by the spankings that I got. But I just felt like, okay, next time I can't get caught doing this bad thing.
Exactly.
I was a bit of a rebel.
I feel you on that. You just get smarter, because me, I will put clothes under my pants because I knew I was gonna get it.
So this is why people like my daddy never took us for ice cream after, because he knew this is what y'all were doing out here, taking these spankings for granted.
So. Taking it like a G.
Yeah, you have to that's why I believe that you have to, if you're gonna ground your kids, like something that it really hurts them. And I remember, because I didn't live with my mom, so my dad raised me. But when he used to say, you're not going to your mom's this weekend, that was kind of like, oh, he will kill me with that. He didn't have to spank me. I will understand the next time, but he didn't get it. He didn't understand that hurt me the most, that he was taking the most important thing to me. Now, take the Switch, take the Nintendo, whatever, PlayStation, all those things that matter to them. Like me, I even block the user from the computer for my daughter. She can't use the computer. I take it away from her. No computer, no cell phone, no TV, nothing. Find a book or something to do. And she will be like, I'm bored. I don't care.
Oh yeah, the cell phone.
Go do the dishes or something, but you're not doing what you like to do. So yeah.
That's why I'm so glad I nipped a lot of things in the butt, from the beginning, from when she was 1 year old, and she would touch something. I'll be like, no, just little things. And now, I just look at her. I just give her the glance, and she knows, she'll tear up. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, no, you're not going to get pals, but I would tell her. But no, if she's doing something really bad, she'll get a little spank and she'll get sent to the room. And that's that. That, I believe in that strongly.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe taking away, some people believe that, taking kids' things away is not a good behavior modifier. I disagree. I think it's not good if you don't do it consistently. I've noticed a lot of people are inconsistent. Maybe they do something that you deem bad. It's like, I'm taking blank and blank away, and then you don't do it for 2 days, and then you give it right back. No, I could win an award with how consistent I am, and with taking things away from my children that they value. And I can tell from maybe 3, she's 5 now, but my daughter being 3, she started to equate that with her behavior quite quickly. Whatever I was asking for, even just a look or turn around, she's like, well, let me tighten up. And when she was younger, she'd be, but please don't take my tablet. And I was like, okay, now she's starting to understand that these bad negative things are equated with you losing something of value to you. So I would definitely encourage parents to be consistent, because I hate when people just and don't threaten. If you're not gonna do it, oh man, don't threaten. I look at people in the grocery store doing that. It's usually the moms too. They threaten. Do you want me to? And I'm sitting there like, do it, lady, do it. Don't threaten.
And my friend, she's an ECE, and she said, if you're going to make a promise, you have to follow through, with everything. A good, bad follow through.
So I hear that a lot too in the grocery store, the threatening to call the dad. I'll call your dad. I'm going to pick up the phone. Because the dads are usually more of the iron fist.
So, my wife can't do that anymore.
Really?
She said my son falls out. No! Please. So she said that threat is
it's awesome. My son, there's levels to it. So for him, it's when it comes to disrespect, we do corporal punishment. So we're doing push-ups, wall sits, and all kinds of stuff, suicides. And I do them with, like, I'll do them with him. So I'm not asking him to do anything that I won't get down on the ground and do with him. And then managing like negative emotion. So like talking to him about, you know, the logic behind what led up to him having this, maybe like, you know, upset or whatever the trigger was. So then next time we can handle it this way or that way. But he's too big for me to be whooping. I'm like 5 foot. So if I try to whoop him, he flails. I'm going to be whooping myself probably. Not really him.
And we won't judge you if you don't do the suicides and wall sits with your kids.
Yeah, just watch them.
Yeah, I definitely will sit down and eat popcorn while they do it.
I feel like I can't ask my kid to do something that I'm not showing him that at least like, hey, like mommy's not asking you to do something that like I can't physically do as well. Because sometimes he'll sit up there and like fall out like, oh, I can't do it. Like he'll act like his arms are broken. And I'm like, dude, you be like this all the time. You got the strongest.
Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it.
Yeah.
Because yeah, my son gonna do those push-ups. I dare him to ask me if I could do it.
Yeah. That's
20 more
too. If parents aren't, I mean, and obviously I don't have kids, so I always tread lightly with talking on kids and parenting or whatever. But I know they do say, you know, if kids see your parent or their parent doing something that they're being told not to do, that's kind of a, you know, it's like, how do they take that? You know, it doesn't make any sense, but because kids are sponges.
Yeah,
so
I think
like
for as long as I've lived, I've known that do as I say, not as I do was wrong. Even as a kid, I was like, this doesn't seem right at all.
Right.
So,
yeah, I think that I like something. Trigger Mike said something earlier about the way that he raised, you know, approaches parenting that I thought was really good. I think that we need to. There's no perfect blueprint on how to raise kids. There's no. I wish there was a manual on how to perfectly nail it each time. And I have 4 boys, and you know, the approach is different based on who they are. But what I like about what Trigger Mike had said earlier, it was something that reminded me of one of my therapeutic approaches, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is dealing with your kids first, understanding their thoughts, understanding their feelings, understanding how both of those things play into their actions, and understanding how the combination of all of those things creates their core feelings or what it is that they believe about themselves and the world around them. So learning those different aspects of your kids gives you a lot of insight on the things that you need to reframe, and however you're going to reframe them, that's going to be the interventions you put in place, which might be running suicides. It might be taking something of value away. That's, you know, those are all, I consider those all treatment plans and interventions. But I think that method, exactly how Trigger Mike had mentioned it, is something that I think is a steady blueprint that if all of us as parents at least approach our children looking at them more holistically, that the outcomes would be much better than, you know, just do what I say because I said to do it and then not having any kind of context, you know, behind it and things like that.
No, I agree. I think but the best thing for children is to put them in a program, like even like let it be sports. I think through sports, at least I know a lot of times we can't afford it and we have the excuse, because that was my parents' excuse, like they couldn't afford the sports or like extracurricular activities. So I had, you know, ample amount of time just to be in my head, you know, and a lot of times that's why with my daughter, I don't physically do that with her, but she's in karate. So she does 2 hours of karate like every Saturday and she's exhausted. So, and then by the time like she's learning with such things, the teachers, the coaches themselves show them discipline, and she's learning so much. She's respecting elders, and like these are the things we need to instill, because a lot of times I'm seeing these kids are so disrespectful. Like I'm like, where are your parents? Like I want to discipline you now and come to my boot camp because I will straighten you out. A lot of times these kids are, walking around like I would never do that as a child, right? So like I feel disrespected now. So that's why I think like it's so important to discipline. But like I said, there's a balance, right? But like discipline them and love them, hold them, cuddle them. And a lot of times, like my dad, I don't think I've hugged my dad. Like he doesn't hug or things like that. Emotional connection we don't have. So when I see parents like Kelly's parents are amazing. I love, she always talks about her family and I love that. And like she had that support. And sometimes I'm like, we don't have that. Like a lot of us don't have it. So yeah. Welcome.
A lot of adults, you could tell they weren't disciplined as kids, but I don't know. I know everyone is around the country or a different country, but they have this thing called Kid Strong. Has anyone heard of it? It's like a physical thing that like kids go through. I don't know what the ages are, but they also teach them like principles as far as, I'm about to look it up and then I'll get back to you guys because my niece was going through it and I was like, wow, this is such a cool thing. But obviously, it's not accessible to everyone. I'm sure there's a cost to it, but it's like, it's really cool stuff, but I'll look it up.
So okay, I'm sorry. I do have another question. I know a few people have to leave soon, so I do want to get to the next question. It's do you feel your religion helps or hinders the prioritization of mental health? And then I have a few follow-up questions. And if you don't have a religion, you don't have to answer.
Definitely hindered, but me, like I was born into Islam. However, I never really practiced it so much because it was so negative. Like I saw it in a negative light with my family because I saw people praying 5 times a day and then they will like go ahead and curse and like hit people or just bad. Like it wasn't a good light, right? So I kind of like strayed away from religion. I think that's why I'm so like into mental health and so into like meditating and all that, like everything that makes you feel good mentally, not so much like a faith, right? Because a lot of times with religion, my parents, they're just like, oh, I'm gonna pray it out of you, or like, I'm gonna pray on you, or it would be like, so there's ruqya. It's called ruqya in Islam religion, where they read the Quran over you and spell out the demons, the exorcism, but it's called ruqya, right? And my friend is going through that right now, and she's like my age. However, she's very much like, she believes that it's something that someone did, like black magic, and black magic is real. Like I know, but sometimes I feel like we put all that responsibility onto like an outer dimension, or sorry, I'm like lost of words, but in something else we put that responsibility, but not really seeing that it's in our control. So I'm telling her, like, sometimes you have like, hey, maybe it's something that you have to like, because she prays over, she's like, oh wait, it's back. I'm like, maybe it's something else, but I don't try to sway her on a different, like in a different site, because she wouldn't understand. It's her beliefs. It's her, like, it's subjective to her, but to me it could be subjective, right? So I don't try to instill my beliefs onto her. But anyway, thank you. I'm spiraling.
Okay. I'd like to give Sayeda a chance to go. I know she has to go in a few minutes. So if you want to answer the question, I have to leave.
Well, if religion, to be honest, just like F. Robinson, I forgot how to pronounce your name. Sorry. I did go to church when I was little with my grandma. Like every Sunday, I studied in a Christian school all my life. So, but I do remember they used to take care of us. Like, they used to talk about, all these situations, not just for mental health, but also like physical. They used to come to school, talk about STDs all the time, even at work. So I think because of the culture, we're more supportive and we don't isolate people. We are very like, like joined, like together, united. So I think that kind of like, even if the religion was a problem, our culture kind of like tells us that we cannot leave, someone alone. So that's not something that happens very often. that got me to check the stats in El Salvador, and it's only 6 million people in the country, only 66 psychologists in the public health system. So it's little, but
In your country, in El Salvador?
Yeah.
56?
Mm-hmm. But what I have noticed is that at work, well, the company I was working, last year, they used to come like every month with all these campaigns to talk about mental health. They would talk about depression, then they will talk about anxiety and all those things. So they really took care of that. And then the companies, probably the public health system is not as good, because you will say 66 psychologists is not enough. But there is a private sector, and that's there's a lot more people. So they are the ones taking advantage of this, because they offer the service to the companies, and they come and like provide these services to the companies, and then it's mandatory for everybody to assist to the session, or they record it, and then everybody has to kind of complete an assessment after, so to make sure that everybody actually paid attention. So I think it's good, and it has nothing to do with religion in a way, because at the end of the day, you could practice a religion, but then it's a matter of how your people see it at the end of the day, because that's what I think that in a way help us. A lot of people say, 10 Latinos living in one house. We're not gonna let one down. That's for sure. If we're gonna have to kind of tight a little bit, but we're gonna take care of each other. That's how we look at things. That's how we see it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's an overworked group of psychologists. That's about 91,000 patients per psychologist.
If everybody decided to go on a session, 91,000 each. Yes.
I hope their salaries are high. I hope they get vacation, unlimited PTO. Yikes.
And we started off as more reform. My mom is now Orthodox, so she's Chabad, which is more like understanding and like a universal, like they're not as strict on old laws or like Leviticus from like the Torah and stuff like that. So like my mom used to keep kosher, she doesn't anymore. So things like that. So for that, I would say they don't really acknowledge, they acknowledge mental health, but they feel like there's things that you can do, like they almost stigmatize it. So like if you just pray more, if you do this, if you spend more time in your community, it's about your community. Versus like Chabad, I know here in Dallas, they have like a Jewish family center, and like they offer mental health resources to the community, whether you're Jewish or not. And that's run by like people who are of the Chabad denomination and stuff like that. And so I think that that's part of the reason why my mom kind of made that transition too, is realizing like, okay, mental health and things like this is more important than just secular community and don't ask, don't tell kind of thing. And then for me with the Christian stuff, because I am a Messianic Jew now, because I've gotten baptized and everything like that. I believe in Christ. I would say like before, the churches that I would go to would kind of like, so with it was like a touch and go thing. Like they wouldn't really dive into asking me, like they just offer prayer, or we could put you on a prayer list. The church that I'm a part of now though, they're wonderful. Like they have counseling in the church, and then like they don't shun you. Like they talked about when Job went through depression, and they also talked about like how God sent angels to comfort, I think was it David, somebody that was going through a depressive episode, and it says that God is telling you that it's okay to feel these emotions and stuff like that. So I really do enjoy the fact that like I can have open, candid conversations in my religious group, because they focus more on like relationship and not religion per se.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to look at it. I don't know if anyone else wanted to chime in as far as their religion.
Yeah, I'll
Um,
be. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll be real quick because it's kind of like what somebody was saying, that when I'm working on my thoughts and things like that, and how, what my perspective is, oftentimes when I really can't get myself on the right track or whatever, my faith always brings me such a sense of peace. I'm a Christian Catholic, but really working on my relationship with the Lord has just brought me so much peace. In areas that it just filled in the gaps, which of course I believe is it's the foundation anyway. But it really brings me a sense of comfort, especially when I'm struggling or just really suffering, emotionally suffering, or any type of hardship. And for those that believe, Jesus on the cross, he was definitely emotional. I mean, he was physically suffering, but it just brings me, it grounds me, and it doesn't make me feel as alone and as overwhelmed and almost at a place of like loss, like this is never going to get better type of thing. When I turn to my faith, it's just always like it's always good. So I will say that
It gives you like something higher to hold on to.
absolutely.
Just what's going on in your mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't feel as alone. I feel like he's with me. He's got this. I'm just gonna trust in him versus keep like worrying about it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. I also, was raised a Christian, and one thing that I think I can affirm is that as society has gotten further away from religion, other things have crept in, right? So Kelly was talking about how everything was related to spirits. I feel like when you said that, I was like, spirit seems to be another word for feelings, right? So everything that that is a spirit, a demonic spirit, it's really the same thing that you're feeling, but in religion we have names for it. And that's really interesting to me, because now people have substituted learning about spirits and referencing it that way to their feelings. Like I'm feeling it. They've substituted spiritual healing for the want for medication and escaping into their own types of ways, drugs and ways to find that. So I felt like that's an interesting dynamic there in which people have substituted religion for their own type of escape and creating their own vices. But I do believe that being spiritually grounded does help a lot, because it could probably help you understand better when that is not going to help you at all. I feel like so many people aren't grounded to anything. They feel everything. Everything is even when people talk, they'll call themselves a vibe. I don't know how a person is a vibe.
I'm sorry.
Everything is a vibration. Yeah, am I speaking out of turn, or do y'all not?
I use that because
I
it
think
just
the same
it's
thing.
just the way to say it.
I'm a vibe. I'm a vibe. I'm
They
like,
call themselves a vibe.
Like this is it. Like this is a vibe.
And everything is about energy and vibe, and they're just giving different
don't
names
go there.
to they're trying to create their own understanding for something that already has a basis and exists in religion. And I feel that leads to them self-medicating and trying to figure themselves out that way. But no, I do feel as though being spiritually grounded, because like I said, my parents and all foreigners, they can overblow it. They can go too far. But it does help you to know that if this is the spiritual foundation we have, let me first understand this. There's so many things we find ourselves in this particular modern society that I say the reason for it's so much confusion out here, whether it's gender, whether it's religion, whether it's sexuality, it's all confusion because no one's grounded in anything. Understand the basis for yourself, whether it's through your family, whether it's through a loved one that can explain things to you the way the earth is. then make the decision what you want to be after that. Then maybe you'll be more in tune with what your problems are because you were grounded to something first. So I think that's extremely important. Not that people go out and get religion, so to speak, but just basic understanding of, what makes you tick. And stop going out here chasing the next bit. Like, don't let your religion be a trend. Right. If first it's now I'm a vibe, and people gonna want to be steel robots in 10 years. I'm digital. How are you? Like, yeah. So it's really all I got. I hope I'm making sense, but
No, that was hilarious. Thank you. Bye, Fee. Thank you for joining.
Bye, Fee. It's good seeing you. I want to actually ask a question of the panel that kind of feeds off of what all one of you guys are saying, especially for those who come from a deep religious background. Earlier, Indy said that she was talking about a lot of people in her culture would, it's not schizophrenia, it's a demon, and they would try to pray it out. Now, of course, back in the day, whenever most of our religions were becoming, created, they didn't have the concepts of, mental health and these sort of things. And so, of course, they were demons. It made sense to their simple brains. And so what they were using, just like a lot of you said, were actually therapeutic techniques. They were just substituting feelings for spirits, like Kelly was bringing in. I'm curious if any of those religious interventions worked. Did you see someone? I mean, I'm not saying they were actually cured of the demons of schizophrenia, but did you find that they went through that ordeal and it cured them of their affliction? Has it ever worked? Whether or not it truly was a demon is irrelevant. Just going through that process, thinking that way, translating these thoughts in that manner. Indy, especially, you said you saw people that were just like, hey, we'll pray it out of you. Did it ever work? Did the people ever get better?
that's like asking. I have to say this part. That's like asking, has anybody ever turned a hoe into a housewife? But I digress.
I have been incredibly good this whole show, Mike. That's all on you.
You have been good, Raul Duke.
So for the people who were like, it was drug induced, I did notice a sense, because it's like, it's a church. So of course there's a sense of community. So it's like, okay, these people care about me. So for those things, I think for them, that feeling of someone cares about whether I live or die, sparked something in them. Because we did see like people coming back to the church or whatever it was to get resources and things like that. But as far as like severe mental health, like unmedicated schizophrenia, no, it actually like made it worse. Like it was really scary. Like
That's what I figured.
having like somebody have to headlock this person and like literally like drag them out of the room. And as like a child, that's like really traumatic to watch. This guy like falling out in the church, and like people are just like, something is wrong, and they're not helping him, like seeking medical intervention. If someone starts having a heart attack, what are you going to do? Call 911. You're not going to sit up there and like lay hands on them and rub oil on them and tell them like, oh, hey, yeah, your heart attack's going to be better in like 10 minutes. Just watch this. I do this thing with my hand. Like,
that's been happening.
I have witnessed an exorcism, but that is a conversation for another day.
Yeah, I think that like what Indy was saying, for the ones that have like the illnesses that have psychotic features, I've never seen the church help with that. I do think that religion has been largely hindering. Speaking from Christianity, from what I've seen in a lot of churches, that it's been hindering mental health, because still going back to the concept of extremes, now we're seeing a lot of focus on health, wealth, and prosperity. So everything has become very feelings based and not really resilient based, and things like that. And the churches that I've seen have become really emotionally detached. So I really think that counselors and therapists have become what the church was supposed to be, because the church was supposed to be the place where you go and you share your burdens one to another, and you walk with each other inside of your pain. Now that's what therapists have stepped in to do. Now they talk to you, they walk with you while you're going through some of the worst times in your life, and they try to help you stay lifted, and they try to help you process it. So from what I've seen from a lot of the churches, they've been following a lot of the trends. And, you know, but I do want to say, being rooted in having a solid foundation in church and in religion and in Christ in particular, that is the ultimate cure in my opinion. But the way that I've just been seeing a lot of the applications of churches, a lot of prosperity churches, has been very much detrimental.
That's such a good point, and it made me think of something that I find problematic. I hate that word, but it's appropriate here with the self-help industry. Coaches is almost looking at themselves as God. And that's something that I kind of had to grapple with, like, oh my gosh, am I in the wrong profession? Like, trying to control my thoughts and feelings or whatever. But then I had to remember, like, yes, of course, like, God gave me the ability to do this. He gave me free will. But at the same time, of course, he is my foundation, at the end of the day. And I often pray to him, how, use me for whatever your will is and whatever purpose you have for me. And I pray that before I meet with my clients and things like that. Because, again, he's my foundation. And I wanted to say too, back to the exorcism kind of stuff. This is just my opinion, but I do think when people are not, I think there is darkness and there is a spiritual warfare. And I will say that I think people do open themselves up to dark things when they are not, I guess, yes, I will say that. And that is a conversation for another time, but I do believe that.
Right. Yeah. Maybe that'll be next week's topic. We're talking about mental health, not spiritual warfare. So that's why I don't really want to get into all that. But I have witnessed an exorcism. It was quite scary. Like, man, demon voice coming out of a little woman.
Wow.
Throwing up.
Oh, you met my ex-wife.
That hurt?
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No, you're not.
I have seen it all.
I do. I just wanted to say, Coach K, what you said was really good. Talking about how you looked at your profession and like re-examined yourself. I do want to say I would have a lot more confidence in you because you have a psychology background coming from social work, and you're rooted in Christ. So that means you're reflecting on yourself and if you're doing the right thing and how you should be doing it. We're not really realizing that social media is one of the biggest playgrounds for people with personality disorders. So we're seeing a lot of coaches have genuine narcissistic personality disorders, and we're watching them and we're falling in love with the things that they're saying, not realizing that we're being love bombed and gaslit, and they are kind of stealing the show and creating these false images of what relationships look like, what healthy living looks like, and they're kind of destroying it for a lot of the good coaches that are actually doing good work and that are really grounded.
It is 100%. So I think I heard Jordan Peterson say that yesterday. He said it's not even known yet to the damage that it can be done by it, but they're absolutely people with narcissistic personality disorder. And the weird part about it, he said it's people that are traditionally antisocial have found an outlet on social media because the interaction is fake. It's not real. So they can present any version of a life that they want to you, but they're actually someone who's antisocial and gets to feed the antisocial narcissist. Like, I was like, that is profound. Well, I guess we found the devil's playground and the Antichrist.
It's a dopamine fix too for some people. So for like a lot of people, especially like they were talking about the dangers of children and the dopamine like exposure and the quick fix and how it's literally altering the chemistry of their brain because of the access to social media. People are able to see someone go get shot in the head on social media. So now you've got secondhand trauma. Like what you were saying is insane to me. I'm like, this is wild. Like how much exposure can do to the brain.
It's like we're on a plane and trying to fix it while we're in the air. It's like we won't know the implications of this for a long time, and that's
We're just seeing the consequences of the pandemic and locking our kids down. We're just now seeing all of the psychological consequences. Yeah,
right.
So
that was a whole big one. That was huge. Has anyone noticed a difference in their children from that? Because
yes,
I did for my son.
Oh, my children were toddlers. I don't think they noticed much of anything.
Yeah, that was a good point.
Well, and just watching the way that they are now versus like remembering when I was a kid, like the need to be entertained all the time. Like as a kid, I can remember we didn't have iPads on the rides. We were counting the raindrops. Like we were like, which one's gonna get to the bottom of the window?
Playing I Spy. Like, can you find the same color?
Like, we also found creative ways to entertain ourselves. I think that's another.
So I have to force that in my child now
because we would just turn and interact with another person.
Right.
That's something they seem unwilling to do. Like, in fact, they don't. It's almost as if they don't know how.
It's not even unwilling. It's unable. Like they don't know how to. Hey, what's your name? I have to tell my son when he goes to a new place. I'm like, ask him his name. Tell him your name. Introduce yourself. To where when you were younger, you would go in the park. There's a bunch of kids. You'd be like, hey, my name's Joe. Let's play basketball. Now it's like, I don't know.
I think Jonathan Haidt is probably a good person. I don't know if any of you know of who he is, but he does a lot of like social psychology and getting kids out there and letting kids figure it out. But yeah, and plus, a lot of kids that are introverted or whatever are making friends on the web or whatever, but they're not getting used to reading those, nonverbal cues, and they're not, having to know if someone's okay, but they're going to have to hear it or read it through a text to know that they're okay because they can't see them, which causes a bunch of issues anyway. But it's like, and they don't know how to be okay feeling bored. It's okay to feel bored. Nothing's wrong. And then they don't get to know themselves. And it's like, it's a whole mess. But yeah.
So what is the answer? What is the
forced?
Move away.
Forced. You have to force. You have to force them to do that. Like for me, with my child, I can't control anyone else's kids, but like my child and any children that come over, I have a no phone, no tablet rule. Like we're going to go outside and get your bone density up. Like we're going to jump off some stuff and like be kids. Like they literally were doing a study about that. Like kids' bone density is like not even the same anymore because they're not going outside and like getting the like ouchies and stuff. Like,
wow. I know it was taboo. You don't stay indoors when you're a kid. You stay out until the lights went off. And now it's like you can't even get the kids to go outside.
So that's so interesting. So I went to I had some rifles I needed to zero. So I went to the range. I was like, gotta pick up my daughter. I was coming home and I was going on the street where the high school was, and all of them, it's like the high school is across the street from a shopping center. So most of them don't even go home. They just go. And I saw the most, I don't think I've in my adult life seen that many high schools at one time. And I just sat and watched. And I said, these look like the most emotional kids I've ever seen in my life. Because this is the comparison I made, because it's, the crossing guards there. So they let all of them go. I was just watching them for about a minute and a half. And I said, did we look like this as teenagers? And what I realized is they looked very low energy. And I realized that even though we spent the entire day at school, I played basketball and couldn't wait to play every day. So we were more upbeat, running across the street, throwing the ball at each other, smacking each other over the head. And that's what I noticed the difference was. These kids are literally zombie walking across the street, not lively, not interacting with each other, like head down, I said, this is
their device.
Exact crossing the street. And so I knew I see something that just didn't sit right with me at the time. And, I just noticed that today they are completely different than we were.
A lot of parents don't even know their own children. Their tablet or phone raises their children for them. They don't get like all these things we're talking about is stuff that I learned from my parents. They had conversations. We sat down, we had family meetings every night for hours. All 5 of my siblings, my mother, dad, after dinner, we would sit and talk until it was bedtime. It was required. We couldn't go to our room. We couldn't watch television. We didn't even have television, but we had to sit and talk. So we had to learn how to communicate and deal with each other. But now it's like, mom's going to YOLO and go out. Here's your babysitter. And there's no communication. They don't even know how.
Do you know what it's an unfortunate, someone put this on my radar. They said, what's really unfortunate about those that are more traditional and are going to do the work, like Indy said, basically force their kids to do this. Your kids are going to seem like geniuses in this new time. They're going to be like our kids are going to they're going to be so special. Then to us, they're just being raised like we were, but compared to the kids who literally just sat on a laptop and watched TV and the iPad all day, it's basically going to eradicate the middle class. We're going to have more kids without social skills, more in their feelings, and then a super high functioning group. It's almost as if there's going to be no middle, right? So that's kind of going to be terrifying. And I only say that in the sense of if those kids can't function in society and get jobs, what does their future look like? Which,
This is where my faith has to come in because I'm feeling very pessimistic right now. Oh my gosh.
They also,
there has to be a fix, which is the final question. Like in your culture or religion or your background, are there techniques or coping mechanisms, or how would you tell, number one, how would you tell someone how to go get help or when they need to go get help? And then what to do once they go get help? Are there any techniques, meditations?
I mean, there's a slew of different techniques. There's mindfulness. There is, of course, talk therapy. Even that is nuanced though, because you have to find the right therapist. You have to find the person that understands you, the person that specializes in what you're going through sometimes. So, that part is really nuanced. I really think the ultimate fix, just for me personally, the ultimate fix is Christ. And I think that I think that more like-minded people, like people that are like on this panel, need to engage with each other more. I think that we need to, I think that more families need to move in closer proximity to one another that have those types of values, that value raising their children, right? And we have to start valuing our communities a lot more so that way we can start raising a standard. And because otherwise we just have a lot of crazy people in high places that make a lot of decisions, and we have a lot of messed up families and kids that are just raising hell everywhere. And it's the good solid people are usually the quietest ones, the ones that are the most silent, that just put their head down and work. But I think it's time for them to rise up and let their voice be heard.
Nelson, are you familiar with, which I'm sure you are, but EMDR?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that as far as a treatment option that maybe I'm familiar with it, but I don't think a lot of people are? Or what do you think about it?
So I'm only familiar with it in terms of the name. So that's more of the eye movement.
And trauma.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with it in terms of practicing that modality. I just heard it before. I haven't, so I can't speak to it the way that I can speak to CBT and DBT and things.
For sure. I just know it's been helpful for a lot of people, and especially with veterans and other things like that. But yeah, go ahead, Indy.
I was gonna say with that, because I did have it as a form of treatment, and the person who's doing it, like, or treating you that way, they need to really understand what it is essentially that they're doing. because
Mm,
like
mhm.
it's almost kind of like hypnotism in a way, because it's taking you essentially to the battlefield of that trauma.
Mhm.
And so if there's no like grounding and way to
Right.
like pull you back from that,
Mhm.
that like for me it was traumatic the first couple of times that I had it
Wow.
done, because I went through the VA. And the VA, you're a number. So like you get an
Mm.
hour and 15 minutes.
And you have to get up.
And
Nice.
so like they're like, all right, we did this technique to you, like you're over here
Oh
doing
yeah, no.
tapping and stuff like this. And then I'm like flustered and worked up and
I need an
taking-
hour to just take a nap, please. Like,
yeah, and
You
they
had me at VA. Whenever I hear that,
Yeah.
my husband,
Is
I'm
it
like,
is it weird that I want to try it?
yes.
it honestly,
Yes, true.
it Trigger Mike, it really was.
He's like, I want to go to the hospital with my
Like-
crystal guns.
I can go to the VA tomorrow.
nah, you're freaking crazy. But no, it was really helpful for my twin sister, because she had a lot of trauma from my niece having cancer and just a bunch of complications, and she was in like fight or flight that whole time. So then afterwards, she had to process all of that, and it was really. And so then the other just kind of, I'm not going to knock my profession whatsoever, but some of the tools, just as far as being aware of your thoughts and questioning them and processing emotions, she couldn't do any of that because of all the blockage, I guess I'm picturing from the trauma. So it's like, it's important for people to, I wouldn't say the lay person would know how to do this, but that there is a difference, and to just be careful when you're online. Take things with a grain of salt and maybe ask a trusted person,
Even for EMDR, that's something, even though I have my license, I will still need to go back and I would need to get a special certification just to implement it correctly. Like that. And that's kind of what you're speaking to. What bothers me a lot about some of the lay people is that if you don't understand CBT, DBT, exposure therapy, you can do a lot of harm, especially if you're dealing with somebody with past trauma, whether it's sexual assault or whatever it is. You are literally taking them back to that place in time, and the things that they felt, what they smelled, what the scenery looked like. And it is so sensory that you can put them right back in the middle of the worst time in their life. And if you don't know how to pull them out of that or guide them through it, you can do so much damage.
Yeah,
so essentially they are reliving the trauma.
Yes, and because you're having to process it, and so
some people just kind of put it to the back, like almost like.
Yeah, so like for me with my seeing a soldier take their life in front of me, like that was like even still now, right? Like processing that I in my lifetime have witnessed someone take their life, like from within like a 30-foot span in front of me. Like that is something that like movies, nothing can take you. So for me, when they started to dig that back up, exactly what he said about it takes you back to exactly that spot. And then they're like, all right, now I'll see you next week. What?
Like, what am I
right? Like work up to that, even that instance,
and it can cause, like for me, it caused severe depression because it's taking you back to that place. And then I still have to function throughout the week. So it's like half of my brain is in a processing phase, and then the other half is in a phase of like, all right, you got to go, change out this SSD and like you're on go. So it's literally like your brain is almost like split. And it's
I want to say I kind of want to quickly blame that on the VA, just because I don't want people to get a bad idea about EMDR. However, and again, I can't really, I say I'm
blame it on the VA.
I'm trying to filter myself, but it's like I just there's different options out there. But I will say, for all that that's wrong with Western medicine, we do have a lot now. We do have a pretty good healthcare system, and a lot of mental health professionals that do amazing work, like Nelson. So luckily, there are so many options out there that I like to express to people that, hey, like whatever's going on, I recognize it, but I want you to know that you're not stuck. I don't know what this is going to look like from point A to C or whatever down the road, but just know that you're not, there's help out there. And of course too, I would always return to my faith. But yeah.
And that is something that I feel like my faith has afforded me, because my father was a huge part of my life, and like I always say, he was a pastor, and I could be having the worst day, I could be going through something that I felt was traumatic, and I would call him, and he's like, why don't you meditate on this scripture? He was always about like this. He's like, okay, you're feeling afraid, meditate on this spirit, fear scripture, and like that would always like bring me down and like get me to this place where I could deal with whatever was actually in front of me. I was like, okay, it made it seem like it wasn't so bad. Like, okay, God is in control. Have the joy of the Lord, So okay, calm down. All right, now let's deal with what's in front of me. And I think when I lost him, he died in 2021. When I lost him, like it was a huge void that was now missing from my life. Hi, Indy. I'm sorry. Sorry. It was a huge void that was missing from my life. And after I had never lost someone so close to me. And I think he died in October. And by December, I thought I was over it. I was like, okay, good. I'm good now. I'm smiling again. I'm going out with my friends. I'm feeling better. And I realized there was this huge down spiral in my life. And everyone in my family kept saying, you need to get help. Something's wrong with you. You're not yourself. You're still dealing with it. I'm like, no, I'm fine. And I felt like they were telling me that I had a problem. They were calling me crazy. I'm like, I'm fine. And then I got to the point where I was like, you know what? Let's see what this therapy thing has to offer. And it helped tremendously. It helped. I was going out and having fun as a coping mechanism and I wasn't actually processing what I went through. I was pushing it back. It's fine. It's over. It happened, but I'd never actually dealt with it. So I strong advocate for therapists. And if you need help, definitely seek it out, because it's necessary to deal with things that you don't necessarily know how to go deal with on your own. So, but yeah, now I feel much better now that I've had a chance to deal with the loss of my father. So
nice.
Like I said. And I also wanted to say one more thing, Nelson. What you said earlier made me think of the quote, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is in the world is that good men do nothing. So you said a lot of the good people are staying silent and they're not speaking up. And I do think it's time for that, because I feel like evil is prevalent.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I have something to add to that particular. I think to that point, I believe if I'm gonna just talk on the community in general, or rather the Black community in general, a lot of these issues you got to go to the root cause. So when we look at what's happening to young boys specifically in this community and their mental health, it's probably, I can't think of anybody more in need of help, just because of it's almost like it's a pick your poison, whatever part of the spectrum you want to, they're represented in it, so I feel like a lot of people need to wrap them up and kind of show up for them. Because one of the first jobs I had was a day treatment counselor in an elementary school, when they were still allowing, just anybody with a degree to go in there, and not just psychology degrees and all that. And I would just watch these young boys act up, thinking that I was going to need to go get their binders with their coping mechanisms and all of this. But just being around me and hearing my voice was enough. It's almost as if because I showed up, it's like that's what they wanted. Somebody here to be accountable for me, to tell me what to do next, and to help me process my feelings. Like, yeah, he showed up for me, and he gets to take me, and I can go do my work with him. And I take that experience and I watch it like, okay, that's really what's more so needed in this society before we get into therapy and before we get into all of those, very detailed interventions. Somebody needs to intervene at the ground level. Somebody needs to intervene at the home. You got to check on, these kids, need father figures, if not their actual father, So I feel like that's going to do wonders for young boys and their mental health, because the way that they're suffering and the way that they will suffer when they grow up, I really don't know what to say for it. You know,
So
they're being, yeah, go ahead.
no, I just wanted to say that I agree with you on that, but also I was watching a panel, I think it was last week or something like that, and there was three men that were talking about how they perceive therapy and whether it was necessary for men. And it was just the dumbest thing that I ever heard. One person even claimed to be a mental health professional and said that these young boys just need men in their life. And that's the stupidest thing that I've ever heard, because we as men, as Black men, as fathers, we naturally do a good job of teaching behaviors. Our sons emulate us. That's where they learn what's a good behavior, what's not a good behavior. There is still another side of that. There is a biological, a psychological, a social, a spiritual, everything that makes up a complete person. So to say that these boys just need a man, all the man is going to do is most guys that are not where you are, Trigger Mike, because the way you have a holistic method of parenting, but a lot of men do not. A lot of us are very much do as I say. This is the correct behavior. It doesn't matter how you feel. Bottle it up, shut up, and do what you got to do, without addressing the whole person. And because a lot of Black men in particular, because of the way we've been socialized in the media and everything like that, we know one way, we know behaviors. So we can't address the root causes of behaviors. We can't address the emotional things that cause some of the behaviors. So that's where not just therapy comes into play, but there needs to be more Black therapists that are men that have that entire picture of knowing how to work with the whole person, instead of just flippantly saying that all Black kids need is men. I was going off when I saw, I can't remember what panel.
Yeah, I was watching it as well.
And for somebody to claim that they're a mental health professional and to say something like that, like it drives me insane.
I agree with you, Nelson, due to the fact that men are calling themselves men, and I think they're mixing up the word male with men. Just because you have a penis doesn't make you a real man. And you're being present and you don't even know how to handle something because you haven't even dealt with those issues yourself. There's a lot of fathers out here that need therapy themselves, and they don't even know how to give their children that because they don't possess it. They don't even know how to deal with their own issues. They got mommy issues. They got daddy issues. They never dealt with that trauma. So they're just passing off what they think they know. And then you end up with a cycle of no healing, and not wholeness, no wholeness within a human being. So I think Black men need to be open to going to get therapy themselves, and then being able to pour into their children and being present, because my father was so involved in our lives. He steered the ship. We all became what he wanted us to become because he was so active. He didn't allow us to be anything else but what he poured into us. Like, you're my child, you will be this. But if you're not in the house, if you're not in the home, if you're not pouring into them, if you're not developing them, if you're not telling them what they need to be, who will they become? Whatever they see, whatever their friends say, whatever the tablet tells them to be, whatever they see on social media, they're not being parented. I was telling someone recently, everything you know as a man, you should be pouring that into your child. Before he turns 18, he should know everything you know, because you should give him a head start, because everything you learn, he should know before he even leaves the house. You shouldn't have to figure it out like you did. Anyway, I'm off my high horse.
I think that just from being in this space, I've been on other panels where I've talked about mental health or things like that, because I've seen and I experienced, and I think the miseducation too of like you said, the difference between mental health and mental illness, and identifying the difference between the two and knowing how to navigate through the two. Because I know I was on a panel where we were talking about mental health, and they said something about their therapist gave them pills. And I'm like, you mean a psychiatrist? Because you have to be diagnosed. You have to go through an entire psych eval. You can't just walk in there and they're going to tell you, oh, you're feeling sad. Let me give you this.
And they don't provide therapy either.
Yes,
it's like 10 minutes, you're out.
Yes, because
so they give you a pill. Therapists actually walk you through it.
Yeah, and like even now, before you can even be prescribed, you have to get blood work. So you have to get blood work, and then you have to also take a urinalysis to make sure that you're not on any recreational drugs or alcohol. And then you also have to get your blood taken because like they take it and test your serotonin.
Your thyroid, sometimes they'll check.
Yeah, your thyroids, things that might or could possibly be a physical thing that is.
It's called comorbidities. And
yes.
So people dealing with depression, it's important to get those thyroid levels because people don't know that a thyroid disorder can resemble depression. And so, you know, we're talking about a lot of things, and not us, but like people are online talking about a lot of things. They'll read a book or two and then
they don't really understand.
They don't have the whole picture. They don't have the context. They're just talking.
Or influence, like what you were saying. Like I didn't really realize, I don't know, I'm still learning and stuff like that, but how heavy influence is. Like even an introverted person influences, I think it said like something like 5,000 people over their lifetime. So I was like, that's insane, because you think about that. How many people that if someone literally avoids direct contact with humans. So
repeat what you just said.
What that influence?
You said 5,000 people.
I think it's like 5,000 or 50,000. I read it in John C. Maxwell's book about developing the leader within you 2.0, because he talks about like the greatest form of leadership is influence. And then he goes further into like how we influence and we don't even understand the level of influence. So like right now, this conversation, now I'm going to go Google, you know, certain things that I might have heard or whatever it is. So it provokes that thought, that influence.
And for better, for worse. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, I guess I didn't really realize how bad generational curses and stuff like that were. Because I mean, I went through trauma and things like that, but I didn't go through a level of how bad it can get, right? Always had basic necessities, food, water, shelter, lights, things like that. When I lived in Chicago, and I was in esthetician school, we would go and do services for women who had been trafficked, domestic violence, things like that. And then it provoked me to go a little bit deeper. And in the South Side, there's actually like a community center, like a Boys and Girls Club that they had just built in the South Side of Chicago. And I just went in there one day. We were all talking to the girls and the kids in there. And I didn't realize how normalized like early promiscuity, drugs, gang relation, all these things, these kids are doing these as a correlation of their basic needs not being met by their parents. So like, I have to go sell drugs today or be a corner boy because I don't have food in my house and I have 5 siblings. We all need to eat. So for me, I was like, resource is really important. Like giving kids access to resource. Like how can your influence be on them? Because that's really where it starts, is with them. And then extending the same grace to their parents. Because a lot of the time people go to the parents and they're like, you, but they're just a product of whatever they grew up in or whatever they're seeing. So offering resource to even parents, like even having that grace, like we gave out gift cards and the mom was like in tears. She's like, I didn't, you know, I would have thought y'all were going to judge me or try to like, you know, make me read a Bible and try to tell me some stuff and not just give me a gift card just to do it out of the kindness of your heart. So I think
no, go ahead.
community centers and places like that, like the Boys and Girls Club is a great resource. People just think it's like a daycare and stuff like that. Oh, we're just going to drop our kids off in the community, but they don't realize that that's like almost like a safe haven for kids in the community. So if you have it in your community, like I recommend, I know a lot of the time we show up online and stuff like that, but like just actually going within your, metropolitan area and doing something, even if you feel like it's small.
I want to underline bold exactly what you just said, because I think that's a great thing, especially for younger people. It's a nice dose of reality sometimes, and that does, especially you're called to serve others, but too it just brings you a sense of gratitude when you're at your lowest point. Like, I do have my basic necessities. Like, I'm okay. Like, I can take that next step. Like, I'm okay right now, But I think just being in service is always. I think that's a boost to my mental health too. Just those different aspects. But
And then for anyone that's on the panel, I do want to, is it okay, Kelly, if I share something, share like a resource that I have?
Sure, absolutely.
I had to go on my bookshelf and get it, but I recommend it to anyone. I read this before I actually started taking medication because I wanted to educate myself on it and everything like that. But there's a book, and it is called the Feeling Good Handbook. And it's actually written by like a collective of like cognitive behavioral therapists, psychologists, everything like that. They basically did all this research from Stanford, and that it has like a breakdown of literally like everything, every form of therapy that you can imagine, from DBT to cognitive behavioral therapy to the EDMR, like all of that. And then it talks about like medications, even what they are, like SSRIs and stuff like that. I recommend it as a baseline for like a non-biased, strictly clinical.
It's called the Feeling Good Handbook.
Yes.
Okay. Can you put that in the back chat too, please?
Yes, I can. I can also drop it there. But yeah, reading that book as someone who I am high functioning, logical, but I also need to understand why I am having these emotions and stuff like that. It kind of helped to have an actual like non-biased. This wasn't like, oh, Freudian, like someone's ideology that they're pushing out. Like, this was just strictly clinical. To be able to say like, okay, if you take this medication for this long, they like list even like the long-term side effects of taking like serotonin.
I wish I would have had that.
Yeah. So like it talks about all of that and all the classes of drugs, if they interact with other drugs. Like, it's amazing. This book's great.
That's good stuff.
Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody have any closing thoughts? I know we usually go like an hour and a half, so and I want to get you guys out of here. But if anyone has any closing thoughts,
No, great show as always. Very insightful, Nelson and Indy. You shared a lot, girl. Like, woo! Even came with the resources.
No, I love Indy's transparency, because what, being real is what helps reach people, and everybody has their story, and you never know who your story is going to touch. So
I will share that as a final thought, because that is something we know that the people escape to YouTube and these channels to really go to church. Now they take a lot of that. Of what we say. Yeah, some of us are very serious individuals in credential, but they can also come away with a lot of false knowledge and things like that. So I definitely want to applaud everybody for like your transparency. Naturally, we got to be a little bit apprehensive about giving away too much information, but people do need to see some of your personal perspective through your lived experience, and figure out how your real life, the way you fought that, the way you overcame it, and some of your real life struggles, even if it's just a piece of who you really are. And I know in a weird way, people can feel that, like they know it's like, okay, that's real. That's real right there. So
people can sense when you're being genuine. So I agree. So I always appreciate that about you, Indy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
I will say lastly. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Indy.
No, I was just going to say that sometimes being on other panels, it definitely like I've had to step back and be like, my mental health is more important than anything that's going on online.
Mm-hmm.
That is a fact. It takes a toll. I did not even keep the chat up today. I'm like, you know what? This is like I love mental health. I want to stay here in this moment because sometimes like I let it deter and then I like trip over my words because I'm trying to be like so safe. And yeah. Anyway.
You don't get to be who or say what you really want to say because you're worried about what everyone else is saying. It used to bother me. Like when I first joined YouTube, I would look at the chat, but then I'm like, you know what? We're the show.
I know.
Watching us. So let them enjoy the show. They're gonna say something about watching people on television,
It's always my race, but it's okay.
Huh?
It's always my race, but I know what I'm getting when I'm obviously just glad that I can be a part of all these necessary conversations. But yeah, I want to focus on you guys. This is the conversation, and that benefits the audience. But I just want to say quickly, I think I just lost my train of thought. So come back to me, okay?
Yeah. So you want to know what it just kind of came across. You want to know what my biggest fear is about my mental health? I've been getting complimented my whole life about being so well put together, at least in my mental state. I'm the eldest child. I got whooped the most, told to stand up straight, suck it up, all that stuff. And yeah, throughout my life, like even into the military, like I was telling you, that everybody's like, man, you know what I mean? You don't break, you don't do all that. I'm actually afraid that I'm one of those like high functioning depressives. Like I'm afraid that one day it's all going to become too much, right? Because I'm still just functioning, and even down to my career where we were doing some processing of things and leadership training, and they're trying to figure out what type of leader I am and how I fix issues. And they're just, they're applauding me so much but the leader is like, I mean, how do you deal with these things? It doesn't seem like you ever go back to process. You just smooth over and keep on going like nothing happened. My worst fear is that one day I'm just going to crash because I don't process anything. And I feel like so many people are like that from our generation. I just don't deal. You see what I'm saying? On to the next thing. Got to stay positive. No, my worst fear is that one day it's all going to be too much, and I'm gonna need a break. But
are you able to slow down?
About YouTube is like you have a place to get things off your chest, right? And that's a way of processing, talking it out.
True.
Because you're not reacting sometimes,
True. And you know what? To your question, Coach K, I'm not sure, but you know what it is too. I think I'm one. I don't know the word for it. I think if something is going on with me, I pile more stuff on to take my mind off of it, and I've always been that way. When it comes to working through issues with my siblings, work through issues with my wife. No, I'm straight. I'm good. I'm over it already. I'm that type.
Avoidant.
So
like it's not like you're doing it on purpose to be avoidant, but like if someone dies, you'll be like,
if I take a moment and actually deal with it, I'm so afraid it's gonna wreck me, and I won't appear so strong anymore. Like, oh,
Nelson, get in there. We need you to.
Nelson,
I don't want to say anything.
We have a professional on the call Trigger Mike after the show and do like an intervention. Make sure he talks it out.
Trigger Mike, anytime you would want to talk, I'll be available to you. I would imagine the worst time that would come for you would be when you're forced to sit down and not do anything for a minute, because you're so used to go, always having to keep your mind occupied, always keeping yourself occupied with different things. When sometimes things happen to us when we're powerless and we have no choice but to look into the mirror. And for people that have ran from that for so long, sometimes that feeling of being overwhelmed, that can become really powerful. So I would encourage you not to run from it. Like, just attack it bit by bit. Talk about it a little bit, and then if you need to bottle it back up for a minute, then go ahead and do that, because you still got to use your own coping mechanisms. But the goal would be to, after time, slowly chip away at that until when it's no longer going to be a fear of yours. So,
nice.
Anytime in the world you would want to talk, just hit me up.
Thank you.
Was that bad that I said that too? Now I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that to make it like a bad thing. Like, Nelson, you know, go counsel Trigger Mike.
No, it's not.
No.
I
It's not
was
a bad
kidding.
thing.
Hope everyone knows. Like,
Oh yeah.
No, I try not to. I just try to make sure that I don't. I never try to force myself on anybody, and I don't like giving advice when people don't ask for it, because I don't want to ever seem like I have all the answers, because I absolutely don't. I'm just somebody that likes walking alongside hurting people. So, you know, I might not always have the answers, but I'll definitely make sure that I try to find it or refer you to the right person that can help, though.
Trigger
do
Mike,
you have
thanks for your
any?
transparency too.
Yes.
Mm.
So, yes, and Trigger Mike,
You're welcome.
I like joking with you. But Nelson, do you have any specific verses that you lean on, or that's like your go-to that you could share?
I could probably email them. I like, a lot of times when I just sit and think, you know, when I'm dealing with depression, God has given me a garment of praise for a spirit of heaviness, so I try to process that out. When I'm dealing with anxiety, I was dealing with a lot of anxiety earlier today about some job stuff, so I was remembering, you know, God said to be anxious for nothing, but with everything give you know, through prayer and supplication.
That's one of mine too. And perfect peace have those whose mind are stayed on him.
Yeah, I those are kind of like my go-tos, just to really get myself grounded for a moment. But the biggest thing that I actually do though is I'll take a scripture and I kind of make my mindfulness exercise out of that. I'll take a scripture that I really enjoy, and I'll literally just sit and think about what that scripture looks like
Break it
played out
down.
in real life. Yeah, I don't study it or anything. I literally just let my mind imagine everything about it, what that means to not be anxious, what did God have intend for that to look like in our lives, and you know, that kind of stuff helps ground me a little bit.
I like you, Nelson.
Thank you.
That is so good for mindfulness anyway. I could see how if someone isn't religious, that form of, but yeah, I just love it. And I'm just so glad that again, like my faith was not, I had a faith, but my relationship was not strong. So tying these together, I just feel like nothing can go wrong. Sorry, I'm like cheesing, but like literally nothing can, you know, it's just perfect. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. And I think for closing, for me, the biggest thing that one of the main reasons that I even started, you know, getting on YouTube and doing things is I wanted people to start getting back to understanding and developing empathy. I think that's the biggest thing that we need, even when we look at we get on these panels and we see all these you see these people that are just come on to attack and say the most vile things that they can think of. Like, we need to get back to a place of having empathy and realizing the difference between context and justification. And I think that's one of the huge things that we keep messing up is we'll be transparent for a minute and we'll open up about something that we've gone through, or a certain maladaptive pattern that we've had, and somebody will instantly say, well, that's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. You still should have done this, and not understanding
You're being
that
a victim. You're being a victim.
we're not. I'm not talking about being a victim. I'm not talking about making excuse. I want you to understand the context of my life. So even though what I did may not have been right, by providing that context, you can walk alongside me and try your best to understand what I might have been thinking and what I might have been feeling, right or wrong, just so that I can feel that somebody is there with me. That like that's more so along the lines of holding people accountable.
Right.
Holding people accountable is not attacking people. And I feel like as a society, especially on these YouTube streets, we've really distorted that concept.
Right. And then walking alongside them and helping them out of it. And that's people I've been on so many panels where people, they do the attack thing and they talk about all the mistakes people have made, and they're like, oh no, once you were this, you'll always be that. But I'm like, the way I was raised, like I remember prostitutes coming off the street and being healed and never going back to that lifestyle, and God giving them a second chance. And like, if Jesus does it, why can't we? Like, So that's just a weird concept. No, once you're like, I know of women who were human trafficked and then they got healed and became pastors' wives. Like I've heard stories. I've seen these people because I grew up surrounded by the church and Christians, and my dad.
Wait, I missed that. Did you just say a hoe got turned into a housewife?
Yes, there's a girl. She actually wrote a book. Yes, she was very beautiful. She was a model. She was flown out to different countries. There was I think one of the like Saudi Arabian countries. They flew her out there. Her passport was taken and she was stuck out there for years. And they were doing all type of vile things to her. And she got pregnant times. And she
wasn't okay. I guess that's different.
She came back. She finally got back to the States, and she had so many what do you call it? Abortions or miscarriages. She didn't think she was going to be able to have kids, and she finally found God, gave her life to the Lord, and she married a pastor, and she had 3 kids with him. So, and she wrote a book about what she went through. So
she's more of the victim, I thought, in the situation. So
yeah, I was gonna say a lot of the time it's the difference between your story becoming who you are as a person. So like people are blurring the lines of experience versus like personality trait. Like just because you have a child does not mean that you're a baby mama. They love throwing that one around, the baby mama thing.
All right, you're gonna have to explain that one because I thought that's what baby mama meant.
So
I could be the ignorant one here.
So for instance, being someone's mother, period, whether you're in a marriage or not, is not a personality trait. It's something that you like do, right? So that's like saying like, oh, like your personality.
When they're acting like one, they say.
Like, I don't know how to explain it. I guess sometimes I'm not the best at explaining my words, and then I open up.
They justify what they're doing because they're a baby mama. Is that what you're saying?
No. So what I'm saying is like, okay, we take 5 women on a panel. Okay, we've got 5 women on a panel. I'm just going to use myself for example. I've been married twice. All my kids were born in wedlock. Okay, cool. Then we've got a girl who had 2 one-night stands and she's got 2 kids. Then we've got another mom on there who was in a long-term relationship. She was engaged to the dad and they had all their kids together. And then but they're going to categorize every woman on there as a baby mama, regardless. You have a baby and that's who you are. That's what I mean by personality. They don't care about
the
like
story behind it or the context.
The comment that I get a lot is like, oh, you should be happy that someone wants to financially take you and your 3 kids on. And I'm like, I'm an engineer. I make really good living, like, so it's like,
when you said that, the Kevin Samuels little thing popped in my head. Like, I'm a PhD.
Oh yeah, I'm a PhD.
I'm a PhD.
I will say that's what I kind of wanted to close with is that that kind of with the story that you just shared, Kelly. But just that finding understanding, I think, is so important. Nelson, you were touching on that. That has just not only for other people, but for yourself. I like to beat myself up a lot for the things that I do or things that I don't follow through on. But finding understanding is always going to help you in relationships come to like a level footing, I guess. That's always such a good place to be, especially to kind of neutralize the anger and the judgment and all that. But I will say, just in closing, that people truly, whatever's going on right now, I recognize it, but you're not stuck here. I don't know again what it's going to look like, but there are just so many amazing people out here. Your brain itself is extremely powerful, and God is good too. So I will say, there's help out there, but you're not stuck in your situation or your state or whatever. So.
I feel like we had a mental health church session tonight.
So grace for others.
Who wants to close in prayer?
You know what? This is what mature adults do. We don't have to argue on YouTube all the time.
No.
That's
a good point.
I agree.
But like,
and that was the whole point of this particular show. Like I wanted to be able to get different perspectives, different backgrounds, and actually have understanding. Because I find it amazing that there are different cultures, different religions, and different ways people were raised, different thought processes, and you never get to hear that. You only get to hear like what's in your like little immediate circle. I'm sure people like Nelson and Coach K who, and I mean, obviously, pretty much everyone on the panel, that you have a chance to talk to a plethora of people. But a lot of people, their tiny circle is their friends, their family, their coworkers, and they never venture outside of that. And sometimes it's all the same race or the same religion, so you don't even get to hear. All you have is the movies that you see or the documentaries you read, but it's nice to have those conversations. So, and I wanted it to be a safe space where people could just express what they actually think and feel and not be attacked for it. We don't do attacks here. You will be booted off the panel. Of course. You will be. There's this little button I can just unstream you, remove. But thank you so much. I appreciate everyone who stayed till the end. Thank you so much. I know everyone is busy and you're grown-ups and you have real lives. So thank you for taking the time to come on the show tonight. And thank you for everyone who watched and stayed to the end with us. Be sure to tune in. We're here every Wednesday at 7:30 Central. And next week, I'll give you a sneak peek. We're going to be talking about what poverty looks like around the world. Because it's different.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right? It's different. Okay, so that is the show. Have a great week, and I hope to see you next week.
Thanks,
Bye,
Kelly.
everyone.
Bye.
Take care, y'all.
No.